Chapter 487. It's about time. Such strength is sufficient to open the bewitching God Temple's artifacts hall. Qinyu stood up. He didn't need to reach a high level of fusion. He only needed to be able to open the artifacts hall. After all, regardless of how high the degree of fusion was, he would still have to return the gold punishment spiritual pearl to the Dark Star realm when he ascended. Not returning it. Can I not return it? Qinyu had a smile on his face. There had already been over 70,000 gold punishment lords in the Dark Star realm. It could be said that the number of experts from the Dark Star realm that had ascended to the divine realm numbered over 200,000. And this was just the 3 sovereigns. There were many who had yet to become sovereigns. That was even more. On top of that, when the Dark Star realm occupied the entire immortal devil and demon realm, the number of seniors that ascended during the chaotic era was even more frightening. It was definitely over 1 million. If Qinyu were to bring the gold punishment spiritual pearl to the divine world, once discovered, he would be hunted down by over 1 million people. And many of them had ascended for more than 10 billion years. However, this was not the most frightening matter. The most frightening matter was that mysterious individual who had gifted the gold punishment spiritual pearl, black flame spiritual pearl, and white profound spiritual pearl to the Dark Star clan. That mysterious person had said that the Dark Star realm's people were the original inhabitants of this space in the immortal, devil and demon realm. These 3 grandest spiritual treasures were the clan protection treasures of the Dark Star realm. Would Qinyu dare to offend such a mysterious person? At the very least, Qinyu, who was not even a heavenly god, did not dare to offend such a mysterious person. In terms of offensive power, the gold punishment spiritual pearl is inferior to my divine spear waning snow. Qinyu was not greedy for the gold punishment spiritual pearl. The gold punishment spiritual pearl was able to strengthen his body's bones and muscles. However, no matter how strong he was, he would still be unable to withstand the might of the high-quality heavenly divine artifact, the divine spear waning snow. Perhaps this is a third-rate grandest spiritual treasure. Qinyu thought in his heart. This time around, Qinyu had guessed wrongly. This gold punishment spiritual pearl was not a third-rate grandest spiritual treasure at all. This cannot be blamed on Qinyu. After all, Qinyu had only fused with a portion of the gold punishment spiritual pearl, and had not completely fused with it. Thus, he did not know how powerful the gold punishment spiritual pearl would be after completely fusing with it. Congratulations, Your Majesty. The guardian elder's hoarse voice sounded. Qinyu looked to the guard elder, who was still sitting cross-legged in the distance. He lightly nodded and said with a smile, "Guard elder, after becoming the gold punishment lord, there shouldn't be much for me to do, right?" The guard elder nodded and said, "Your Majesty, the gold punishment lord, the black flame lord, and the white profound lord, the 3 great sovereigns, are only there to serve as deterrents. Thus, the Dark Star realm would not be invaded by ambitious people. Normally, His Majesty would not have anything to do." Qinyu could not help but smile. Sure enough, that was the case. According to the history of the Dark Star realm that Qinyu knew, the Dark Star realm was originally in a state of chaotic war. It was only after the appearance of the 3 spiritual pearls that the Dark Star realm began to walk on the path of peace. In peaceful days, the 3 sovereigns had nothing to do. Trifling matters could be completely resolved by the 3 great deputy sect leaders. Of course, the current gold punishment sect only had 2 deputy sect leaders. Qinyu lightly nodded to the guard elder. Then, he stepped through the doorway of the inheritance palace and left. Wenfeng, if you all have any matters, you can send me a transmission. I will be leaving for a period of time to peacefully train. Qinyu only left behind a transmission for Wenfeng. Then he directly left the gold punishment star. Qinyu, the gold punishment lord, was truly unique. After officially becoming the gold punishment lord, he did not even use any of his authority, and directly left. With Qinyu leaving, many people who came to the gold punishment star to pay a visit to the gold punishment lord had made a wasted trip. Of course, those people all sighed in their hearts. This new gold punishment lord who did not show off had immediately continued to train right after becoming the gold punishment lord. He was truly a hardworking cultivator. Qin Yu directly rushed toward the entrance of the Bewitching God Temple. Qin Yu did not enter the Bewitching God Temple from the Dark Star Realm. Instead, he entered the Bewitching God Temple from the Demon Realm. That was because Qin Yu did not wish for others to know that he had entered the Bewitching God Temple. Thus, it was better for him to enter the Bewitching God Temple from the Demon Realm without anyone knowing. The outer space was completely empty. Qin Yu was able to clearly see the enormous spatial crack not far away from him. That enormous star formed by golden fragments and black sand appeared before his eyes. Qin Yu knew that he had arrived at the entrance of the Bewitching God Temple. Immediately, he increased his speed and flew toward the entrance of the Demon Realm. When he arrived at the entrance of the Bewitching God Temple, Qin Yu was shocked to discover there are truly a lot of people here. There are actually several tens of Emperor-level experts and several hundreds of level 9 Demon Kings. Qin Yu couldn't help but shake his head and sigh. Ever since the seal of the entrance was broken by Qin Yu, the various major powers no longer dared to continue to seal the entrance. A large amount of Emperor-level experts and some level 9 Demon Kings, level 9 Demon Kings, level 9 Golden Immortals, had all come here to try their luck. When Qin Yu arrived at the entrance, people immediately opened up a path for him. Among this group of people, the weakest was a level 9 Demon King, and the strongest was a level 7 Demon Emperor. This group of people all respectfully opened up a path for Qin Yu to enter. All of you stop first. Qin Yu directly said, Senior. The several tens of level 9 Demon Kings that were gathered together immediately stopped. They looked to Qin Yu respectfully. Even a level 7 Demon Emperor had to make way for him. They were able to guess Qin Yu's strength. Qin Yu suspiciously said, You level 9 Demon Kings also came here? Could it be that you all think that you can also obtain a divine artifact? One of the bewitching fox women spoke. Senior, could it be that you don't know that a dozen years ago, there was a level 9 golden immortal outside the illusion array, and very luckily obtained a divine artifact? There's such a thing. Qin Yu couldn't help but be stunned. That level 7 Demon Emperor with the highest strength spoke. Senior, that illusion array is constantly changing. And because of the change in energy, the positions of those divine artifacts are also constantly changing. Perhaps there will be a divine artifact that will move to the edge of the illusion array. This way, people with low strength will be able to obtain it. Although the possibility is not high, but this kind of thing has happened many times in history. This is also the reason why the chaotic star field is so chaotic. It's just that later on, all the major forces sealed the entrance. This caused the number of people trying their luck to decrease by a lot. However, ever since Senior Qin Yu broke the seal with a single spear strike, the number of people trying their luck has increased. That level 7 Demon Emperor said in detail. That fox woman sighed. Fortunately, Senior Qin Yu broke the seal. Otherwise, we wouldn't even have the chance to try our luck. The others also voiced their agreement. Qin Yu completely understood in his heart. Seems like breaking the seal has caused many people to be grateful to me. Qin Yu couldn't help but smile in his heart. Alright, you guys continue. Qin Yu said indifferently. Soon after, Qin Yu turned into a ray of light and directly rushed into the entrance of the Bewitching God Temple. Then, his figure turned illusory and disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing Qin Yu suddenly disappear, that group of people couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. Teleportation within the Bewitching God Temple? He rushed into the Divine Illusion Array. That level 7 Demon Emperor said. He was still barely able to see Qin Yu's movements. The level 7 Demon Emperor sighed in his heart. Truly a super expert. Qin Yu wasn't teleporting at all. Instead, his speed reached the limit and directly rushed into the Divine Illusion Array. Qin Yu wasn't afraid of getting lost in the Illusion Array. Firstly, he had the Bewitching God painting. Secondly, once he entered the Bewitching God Temple, the housekeeper Uncle Fu would naturally discover him and control the illusion array to automatically open a path for him. Qin Yu's consciousness clearly discovered a large amount of divine artifacts. However, he didn't take a single one. After flying for a long time, a void finally appeared before his eyes. Within the void was a floating palace, the Bewitching God Temple. Qin Yu directly flew towards the main entrance of the Bewitching God Temple. The main entrance of the Bewitching God Temple was open. A person was standing at the doorstep. Uncle Fu. Qin Yu, it's only been several tens of years. Why have you come again? Uncle Fu had a trace of doubt on his face. However, he still had a smile on his face. All right, come in first. Qin Yu acted as if he was entering his own home, and casually walked in. Uncle Fu, I've come to the Bewitching God Temple this time. I reckon that, not long from now, you'll be leaving this place with me. Leaving this place? Uncle Fu repeatedly shook his head. No, I absolutely cannot disobey my master's orders. Master said that before the Bewitching God Temple is controlled by a new master, I must manage the Bewitching God Temple. I cannot leave the Bewitching God Temple. Uncle Fu, you clearly heard the precondition of your master Senior Choho's orders. Before the Bewitching God Temple is controlled by a new master. Qin Yu said with a smile. And now, I have the confidence to open the artifacts hall. After Qin Yu finished speaking, he walked with large strides through the corridor of the front hall of the Bewitching God Temple. Uncle Fu was slightly startled. After being stunned for a while, he finally reacted. He hurriedly chased after Qin Yu. At the same time he anxiously said, Qin Yu, speak clearly. You said that you can open the artifacts hall. When Qin Yu stepped into the courtyard, Uncle Fu also arrived beside Qin Yu. Qin Yu, have you spoken clearly? Uncle Fu was somewhat anxious. Qin Yu turned around and looked at Uncle Fu. He said with a beaming smile, Uncle Fu, I will tell you clearly. I currently have enough strength to open the artifacts hall's door. In other words, I can obtain the core of the Bewitching God Temple. From today onwards, I am the new master of the Bewitching God Temple. As for you, there is no need for you to continue waiting here. You can follow me and roam the world. Uncle Fu calmed down after a while. Impossible. I am very clear about your strength. It has only been a few decades. How could you have reached that stage so quickly? Uncle Fu said with absolute certainty. Qin Yu said with a smile. Uncle Fu, since you don't believe me, I'll show you. Is that all right? After Qin Yu finished speaking, he directly walked towards the artifacts hall's door. Uncle Fu slightly frowned as he stood behind Qin Yu. He watched as Qin Yu easily found the two key mechanisms just like last time. A cyan light shot out from the bottom of the door. At the same time, two protrusions appeared. Uncle Fu, just pull this door up, right? Qin Yu turned around and glanced at Uncle Fu. Right. At this moment, Uncle Fu was also affected by Qin Yu's confidence. He had a feeling that Qin Yu might really succeed. It was just that Uncle Fu found it a bit hard to believe. According to the original plan, when Qin Yu returned from the Divine Realm, he would inherit the Bewitching God Temple. Qin Yu grabbed one protrusion with each of his hands. Qin Yu suddenly exerted strength in his arms. His muscles bulged. The golden liquid that originated from the gold punishment spiritual pearl flowed within his muscles. Qin Yu's strength continued to rise. Quang! The dark red door unceasingly shook, emitting a series of noises. As Qin Yu increased his strength, the dark red door shook even more intensely. The smile on Qin Yu's face also became even more brilliant. Qin Yu was very clear in his heart that at this moment, he had not even used a third of his strength. Ha! Qin Yu suddenly exerted strength with both of his hands. Following a loud shout, the dark red door rushed upwards at an extremely fast speed. With a kacha sound, the dark red door embedded itself into the mechanism above. The instant the dark red door was pulled up, Qin Yu felt a surge of peculiar aura coming from within. Qin Yu had a feeling that it was the aura emitted by all kinds of treasures gathered together. Even though he did not enter, Qin Yu knew that there were a lot of treasures in the artifacts hall. It was definitely a shocking number. Qin Yu's eyes shined. He stared at the deep passage that appeared naturally after the door was pulled open. Qin Yu, you've actually succeeded. You've really succeeded. Uncle Fu's old face also had a rare trace of pleasant surprise. Uncle Fu was a puppet that possessed intelligence. Puppets could only be created by peak artifact forging experts in the Divine Realm. They were different from the ones in the mortal realm's universe of science and technology. Puppets also possessed human emotions and all kinds of human thoughts. It was just that they did not have the most fundamental soul and were unable to comprehend space. Uncle Fu, you know the layout of the artifacts hall, right? Qingyu looked at Uncle Fu. Qingyu did not want to run around like a blind man. Uncle Fu was slightly excited. Of course I know. The artifacts hall is the place with the most treasures in the entire Bewitching God Temple. There are precious artifact forging materials, all kinds of precious crystals, and many heavenly divine artifacts. Of course, the most precious treasures are still the grandest spiritual treasures. Qingyu was unable to refrain himself from swallowing a mouthful of saliva. His heart was also thumping. Uncle Fu sighed. Sigh, when Master was here, the treasures in the artifacts hall were much more numerous than now. This time, in order to create the legendary exalted celestial spiritual treasure, Master spared no expense. Not only did he take away some precious materials, he even melted down 5 grandest spiritual treasures and extracted the grandest spiritual energy within them. Master was worried that there would not be enough grandest spiritual energy to create the exalted celestial spiritual treasures. 5 grandest spiritual treasures? Melted down. Qingyu felt a bit of heartache. If they were not melted down, wouldn't he possess even more grandest spiritual treasures? Of course, one must not be greedy. Qingyu tried his best to calm his mind. Fortunately, Master thought of a successor. Otherwise, the remaining grandest spiritual treasures might have all been melted down. Come, follow me to the innermost secret room. Master left behind the remaining grandest spiritual treasures because he felt that they would be the most beneficial to his successor. As he said that, Uncle Fu led the way into the deep passage. Qingyu could not help but follow behind him. Just like that, the two of them walked into the deepest part of the passage. Chapter 488. In the deep and winding passageway of the equipment palace, Qingyu followed beside Uncle Fu as they went deeper and deeper. Qingyu observed the walls on both sides of the passageway. He felt very comfortable in his heart. All kinds of relief sculptures were carved on both sides of the passageway of the equipment palace. Moreover, the sculptures were all scenes of nature. That kind of natural feeling could be felt from them. Uncle Fu, looking at these relief sculptures, the person who carved them should be a great expert. Uncle Fu, do you know the person who carved these relief sculptures? Qingyu asked. In Qingyu's opinion, given craftsman god Cheho Yuan's high status, he shouldn't have wasted his time carving them slowly. These relief sculptures were personally carved by my master back then. Uncle Fu's reply surprised Qingyu. You said that these were all carved by Senior Cheho? That's right. Uncle Fu had a look of longing on his face. As the #1 expert blacksmith in the divine realm, one needs to know a lot of things. For example, the ability to gather ores and find treasures, the ability to set up formations and restrictions, the ability to control flames, the ability to carve and draw. In order to become an expert blacksmith, one needs to be proficient in a lot of things. Furthermore, an expert blacksmith is usually also an expert in alchemy. It's just that the difficulty of alchemy is one level lower than that of blacksmithing. The most important thing in alchemy is the furnace, the control of flames, and the understanding of the medicinal properties of various materials. Of course, alchemy is still much easier than blacksmithing. Uncle Fu said with a smile. Qingyu listened attentively. He had long decided to become an expert blacksmith comparable to Cheho Yuan. In fact, he might even become an expert blacksmith, even more powerful than Cheho Yuan. Blacksmithing requires so many conditions? Qingyu was secretly surprised. Uncle Fu smiled faintly and said, Of course. To become an expert blacksmith, one needs to know a lot of things. Among them, the most difficult, most important, and most basic thing is the comprehension of formations and restrictions. Qingyu, you must know that any master blacksmith is also a master of formations. Uncle Fu said with certainty. At the instant a weapon is formed, a powerful formation must be set up within it. Furthermore, the formation must not affect the structure of the weapon in the slightest, allowing the weapon to unleash its greatest power. In short, blacksmithing is very complicated. Qingyu laughed. Refining is complicated. Doesn't that mean that there are fewer blacksmithing experts in the divine realm? Qin Yu felt a burst of excitement in his heart. The fewer blacksmithing experts there were, the higher his status would be. And at this moment, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu had walked to a relatively spacious and empty hall. The layout of the hall was very elegant, and there was a passageway in each of the four corners of the hall. Qin Yu and Xiao Luo walked in from one of the passageways. These three corridors represent three different levels of treasures. The first corridor has the most rooms, but the items there are the most common. Uncle Fu pointed at a corridor in the opposite corner. Qin Yu nodded slightly, and immediately turned his gaze to the other two corridors. The second corridor is where the more valuable things are stored. There are also many rooms. Follow me, Uncle Fu said as he stepped into the second corridor. Qin Yu's spiritual sense wanted to investigate, but in this place, his spiritual sense could not penetrate far at all. After stepping into the second corridor, Qin Yu took a glance and saw a couple of rooms. Uncle Fu, what are the things in these rooms? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu said with a smile. The rooms in the second corridor mainly store some heavenly divine artifacts, some more valuable blacksmithing materials. Of course, there are also some strange and valuable collectibles and the like. Come, let's enter this room first, Uncle Fu said as he pushed open the door to the first room. Qin Yu followed Uncle Fu into the room. Upon entering the room, the scene he saw immediately changed greatly. The room immediately became a huge courtyard that occupied an area of several hundred meters. The courtyard's floor was paved with stone slabs. At the same time, there were square stone counters placed all over the courtyard. Each counter was half a person tall, and on top of the counter, there was a weapon placed. At a glance, there were several tins of counters placed in the courtyard, and on top of each counter was a heavenly divine artifact. 68 heavenly divine artifacts. This many? Qin Yu's eyes couldn't help but shine. He carefully examined the heavenly divine artifacts placed on top of each counter. Some of the heavenly divine artifacts were heavy battle blades. Some were long and narrow battle blades. Some were curved blades. Some were long swords. Some were short swords. Some were soft swords. Some were 9-section whips. All kinds of heavenly divine artifacts were placed before one's eyes. This was truly shocking. Qin Yu, these 68 heavenly divine artifacts were all personally crafted by my master when he was bored. Among them, there are 42 low-quality heavenly divine artifacts, 22 mid-quality heavenly divine artifacts, and 4 high-quality heavenly divine artifacts. In total, there are 68 heavenly divine artifacts. Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu in confusion. Uncle Fu, why are there so few high-quality heavenly divine artifacts here? Qin Yu, you are a bit too greedy, said Uncle Fu with a chuckle. Qin Yu, you need to understand that even the cleverest housewife cannot cook without rice. In order to craft a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, you need extremely precious materials. You must know that generally, high-quality heavenly divine artifacts are comparable to Grand Miss spiritual treasures, even though they are only second or third-rate Grand Miss spiritual treasures. Qin Yu came to a slight understanding. It was precisely because Grand Miss spiritual treasures possessed Grand Miss spiritual energy that they were so powerful. High-quality heavenly divine artifacts did not possess Grand Miss spiritual energy. For a high-quality heavenly divine artifact to possess such might without Grand Miss spiritual energy, it would definitely require extremely precious materials. In order to craft a high-quality heavenly divine artifact, you need extremely precious materials. My master does not possess much power in the divine realm. He is able to gather ordinary materials by himself. As for those precious materials, one would need to possess great power, or be extremely lucky to be able to obtain them. My master only obtained some precious materials as a reward when he was crafting artifacts for others. Uncle Fu gasped in admiration. My master has moved unhindered in the divine realm for so many years. Every time he crafted artifacts for others, he would always ask for a very high price. That was why he was able to gather a large amount of precious materials and craft that many heavenly divine artifacts and Grand Miss spiritual treasures. In terms of the number of Grand Miss spiritual treasures, my master possesses more than any power in the divine realm. Uncle Fu appeared to be very proud of himself. Back then, the craftsman god Cheho Yuan possessed a very high status in the divine realm because he did not belong to any power. On top of that, he was the #1 artifact craftsman in the divine realm. Thus, no power dared to offend him. This was also the reason why Cheho Yuan was able to possess that many treasures and still exist safely. Unfortunately, for the sake of crafting an exalted celestial spiritual treasure, my master has spared no expense. All of the most precious and peculiar materials, as well as many grand mist spiritual treasures, have been melted down by him to obtain grand mist spiritual energy. The majority of the wealth in the bewitching god temple has actually been taken away by my master. Uncle Fu explained to Qinyu. I understand. Qinyu completely understood. Merely from Cheho Yuan's last words, Qinyu was able to sense Cheho Yuan's desire for the legendary exalted celestial's spiritual treasure. For this Cheho Yuan to leave behind this many things for him, it was already extremely generous. Uncle Fu, bring me to the other rooms to have a look. Qinyu turned around and followed Uncle Fu out of the room. There were 3 great corridors in the artifacts palace. Under the guidance of Uncle Fu, Qinyu saw several rooms in the second corridor. The items in this second corridor were truly incomparably precious. Any one of them would be classified as an inherited treasure in the immortal, devil and demon realm. These precious materials, I wonder when I'll have enough strength to use them to craft a heavenly divine artifact. Qinyu sighed. Then he left the last room in the second corridor with Uncle Fu. From Qinyu's point of view, those precious materials would not melt under the burning of the black divine flames. After walking out of the second corridor, they returned to the central living room. There are only 2 rooms in the third corridor. Uncle Fu pointed to the most important corridor. The walls of this corridor were completely black. The carvings were mainly composed of black and red. Upon entering the corridor, Qinyu was shocked to see a dragon's head. The scarlet-red eyes of the dragon's head were staring at him. Huff! Qinyu felt his heart violently jump. Only then did he discover that it was only an enormous carving. The entire corridor was a complete carving. That dragon-shaped carving was naturally emitting a domineering aura. Qinyu gasped in admiration in his heart. Senior Cheho Yuan's carving skills have indeed reached a world-shaking level. The #1 artifact craftsman of the divine realm is truly not that simple. There were only 2 rooms in this black corridor. One was on the left, and the other was on the right. Within this room are 3 grand mist spiritual treasures. Master left them for you. Uncle Fu pointed to the door on the right. Puzzled, Qinyu pointed to the door on the left and said, "What's in that door?" "The thing hidden within the door on the left is the most precious. Don't be anxious. After you finish looking at the room on the right, you can look at the room on the left." With a smile on his face, Uncle Fu pushed open the door to the right. Most precious? Qinyu was puzzled. More precious than the 3 grand mist spiritual treasures? What could it be? Qinyu, quickly come in. Uncle Fu stood at the door to the right and shouted to Qinyu. Qinyu acknowledged. For the time being, he stopped thinking about the thing hidden within the door on the left. Following Uncle Fu, he stepped into the door on the right. The door on the right contained the grand mist spiritual treasures. Right after entering the room, the scene before him changed again. Splash. Before he could see the scene before him clearly, Qinyu heard the sound of flowing water. Qinyu looked toward the source of the sound. It turned out that it was a river that was flowing unceasingly. On the river was a small boat. Qinyu began to carefully inspect his surroundings. The layout of this room was that of a ravine. There was a river, and a boat floating in the river. On the bank of the ravine beside the river was a stone house. Beside the stone house was a tall gray stone pagoda. Uncle Fu, where are the 3 grand mist spiritual treasures? Qinyu asked puzzledly. Uncle Fu shook his head and laughed. Haha, grand mist spiritual treasures possess intelligence. If they do not wish for others to discover them, you will not be able to discover them even if you are right in front of them. Look carefully. You should be able to see the 2 grand mist spiritual treasures now. They are right before your eyes. Right before my eyes. Qinyu was puzzled as he carefully inspected the various things before him. The floating boat, the flowing river, the stone house, the stone pagoda, the stones, the flowers, the grass, and so on. That boat is strange. Qin Yu suddenly stared at the boat. The river was flowing unceasingly. The boat was floating on the river and swaying unceasingly. However, no matter how much it swayed, it was still in that region. It simply did not continue to flow with the river. That's right. That boat is one of the 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures. The name of that boat is the Divine Boat Flying Yamen. It is a flight-type spiritual treasure. In the Divine Realm, it is an extremely precious auxiliary-type Grand Mist spiritual treasure, said Uncle Fu with a smile on his face. Look again. Are there any other things that might be spiritual treasures? Qin Yu smiled helplessly. I'm not sure. I feel that it's either that stone house or that stone pagoda. Uncle Fu looked at Qin Yu in shock. He nodded and said with a smile. That's right. That stone pagoda is the other Grand Mist spiritual treasure. In the Divine Realm, it is also an extremely precious auxiliary-type Grand Mist spiritual treasure. God-Sealing Pagoda. God-Sealing Pagoda? Qin Yu looked at the ordinary gray-colored stone pagoda in shock. He did not expect that this stone pagoda would have such an amazing name. As for the 3rd Grand Mist spiritual treasure, it is located in that stone house. That is the only Grand Mist spiritual treasure among the 3 that possesses offensive capabilities. Uncle Fu smiled as he walked toward the stone house. Qin Yu immediately followed behind him. The stone house was not large. After walking into it, Qin Yu saw that there was only a praying mat placed in the center of the house. Behind the praying mat was a long counter. On top of the long counter was a round plate. On top of the round plate was a pair of nearly transparent gloves. Qin Yu looked at the pair of gloves in shock. If he didn't look carefully, he might not be able to see them. This pair of gloves is the one with the most offensive capabilities among the 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Its name is Snowthread Gloves. Uncle Fu said with a smile on his face. These 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures were left behind by Master for you. With these 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures, as long as you reach the heavenly deity realm, you will be able to move about unhindered in the divine realm. Qin Yu nodded his head slightly. Qin Yu did not know exactly what use these 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures possessed. He had to refine them first. Merely refining Grand Mist spiritual treasures was not that easy. Refining these Grand Mist spiritual treasures requires time and energy. For the time being, there's no need to rush. Let's go check out the other room first. Qin Yu nodded his head. Then he said to Uncle Fu, Uncle Fu, let's go check out the other room. Even now, Qin Yu was still thinking about that room. After all, the things in the room on the left were more precious than the things in the room on the right. Chapter 489. Uncle Fu nodded and said with a smile, there is no need to be anxious for the time being. Although the things in the room are important, the 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures here are the Grand Mist spiritual treasures that you will need to travel the divine realm in the future. Please tell me, Uncle Fu. Qin Yu suddenly realized something. The Divine Boat Flying Yamen and the God-Sealing Pagoda are 2 auxiliary Grand Mist spiritual treasures. If you have the time, it is best that you refine the Divine Boat Flying Yamen first. After that, we can refine the God-Sealing Pagoda, and finally the Snowthread Gloves. Uncle Fu suggested. Qin Yu was slightly puzzled as he asked, Uncle Fu, why are offensive spiritual treasures refined last? In Qin Yu's opinion, his own strength was the most important thing in the divine realm. He should have refined this Snowthread Glove as soon as possible. Uncle Fu shook his head and said with a smile, you already possess the Divine Spear Waning Snow. Your attack power is already very strong. Furthermore, high-quality heavenly divine artifacts are not as hard to refine as Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Therefore, there's no need to rush to refine the Snowthread Gloves. I agree with that. Heavenly divine artifacts are indeed easier to refine than Grand Mist spiritual treasures. Qin Yu nodded and said with a smile, as long as one's soul had reached the Soul Jin Dan realm, one could easily refine a heavenly divine artifact. Furthermore, in terms of might, a high-quality heavenly divine artifact was comparable to a second- or third-rate Grand Mist spiritual treasure. Of course, Even though they were all high-quality heavenly divine artifacts, there were still differences between them. We'll leave these 3 grand mist spiritual treasures here for now. In the future, when you have the time, you can slowly refine them. Only by completely refining these grand mist spiritual treasures will they be able to unleash their strongest power, said Uncle Fu with a sigh. Come, follow me to the other room. Qin Yu immediately nodded his head and followed behind Uncle Fu. The two of them left the room that contained the 3 grand mist spiritual treasures and entered the room on the other side. He stepped inside. The surrounding scenery changed greatly. Qin Yu carefully observed his surroundings. This was a misty and boundless starry sky. Numerous bright stars were emitting misty starlight in the distance. As for the place where Qin Yu stood, it was the outer space. Not far in front of Qin Yu was a house that was floating in the starry sky. Numerous golden scrolls were floating around this house. There were several thousand of these golden scrolls. The thousands of golden scrolls floated around the room. What's going on here? Qin Yu looked at Uncle Fu in confusion. Uncle Fu smiled and said, Qin Yu, it looks like a starry sky, but the space here is actually not that big. Whether it was the front, back, left, right, up or down, it's only 1 mile away. You won't be able to take another step beyond 1 mile. Uncle Fu, you mean to say, those stars are merely a kind of illusion technique? Qin Yu immediately understood. Yes, it's an illusion. Uncle Fu smiled. Although Master's strength is strong, he hasn't reached the point where he can refine a space. At most, he can set up a small area. Uncle Fu pointed to the stone house floating in the center. Inside that stone house is the core of the entire bewitching god temple. The refining flame wristband, refined from 9 purple origin flame pearls. Refining flame wristband. Qin Yu was moved. This refining flame wristband was the core of the bewitching god temple. The purple origin flame pearls are third-rate grand mist spiritual treasures to begin with. Master refined the 9 purple origin flame pearls into one and created this refining flame wristband. With this refining flame wristband, you will be able to increase your ability to control fire. As for the refining flame wristband itself, it can be considered a second-rate grand mist spiritual treasure. However, to an expert artifact refiner, it is comparable to a first-rate grand mist spiritual treasure. Uncle Fu smiled as he looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu was able to guess what Uncle Fu meant. To an expert artifact refiner, the ability to control fire was extremely important. It was not only the control of the fire, it was also the level of the fire. As for this refining flame wristband, it was refined from 9 purple origin flame pearls. Likely, it was a fire attribute grand mist spiritual treasure. Its help in artifact refinement was self-evident. Qin Yu, the most important thing for you right now is to immediately refine this refining flame wristband. Uncle Fu looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu nodded. He looked at the floating house. Refining this refining flame wristband would mean that he would be in control of the bewitching god temple. Qin Yu immediately stepped into the air and walked toward the floating house. However, after only taking a couple steps, Qin Yu's gaze turned toward those golden scrolls. What are those scrolls? Qin Yu asked in confusion. Uncle Fu smiled and explained. Those scrolls are scrolls that record martial techniques, secrets, or all kinds of knowledge. They are equivalent to your immortal, devil, and demon realms jade slips. However, the amount of information that a scroll can record is much greater than a jade slip. Qin Yu was a bit surprised. Qin Yu knew very well about the amount of information that a jade slip could record. The amount of information that a jade slip could hold could be said to be astonishingly large. Even the so-called storage disk of his master Lei Wei's cosmos of science and technology could not compare to a 10,000th of a jade slip. These golden scrolls actually had a much greater amount of information than a jade slip. As expected of an item used to record information in the divine realm. Qin Yu, the reason why I said that the things in this room are more precious than the grand mist spiritual treasures in the room on the right. It is mainly because of these scrolls, said Uncle Fu with a serious expression. Qin Yu couldn't help but be startled. At the beginning, Qin Yu had thought that it was because of the refining flame wristband that Uncle Fu said that the things in this room were more precious than the things in the other room. He did not expect that it was because of these scrolls. The value of these several thousand scrolls cannot be described with numbers. Among them, there are descriptions of medicinal herbs, all kinds of peculiar monstrous beasts, all kinds of dangerous places in the divine realm, and so on. In order to become a master artifact craftsman with a high status, one must learn all of them. Uncle Fu pointed to the floating golden scrolls. Qin Yu's gaze was like a torch as he looked at those golden scrolls. These golden scrolls are the records of all of Master's knowledge. There are many things that cannot be described with words. You can only comprehend them yourself in the future, said Uncle Fu with a smile. However, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Right now, the most important thing for you is to grasp the most fundamental and most important skill of an artifact craftsman. Formations. Formations? Which scroll is it? Qin Yu asked. Qin Yu already had the determination to learn and research. Which scroll? Uncle Fu was slightly stunned. Qin Yu smiled and said, "That's right." "What's wrong, Uncle Fu? Could it be that you are telling me that a single golden scroll is not enough to record Senior Chiho's comprehension of formations?" Qin Yu said jokingly. Of course. Master left behind 900 scrolls of the formation path. You must completely comprehend these 900 scrolls before you can be considered to have taken the first step on the path of a formation expert. Uncle Fu nodded and said. Qin Yu felt a burst of pressure. Uncle Fu, please don't tell me that these 900 scrolls are all full. Qin Yu was very clear about the storage capacity of jade scrolls. After so many years, he had never seen a jade scroll filled with information. As for the golden scrolls, which had a larger storage capacity than jade scrolls, Qin Yu felt terrified just by imagining how much information a single golden scroll could store. Even if the divine sense of an expert in the divine realm was extremely fast, the amount of information a single golden scroll could store was still very terrifying. These 900 scrolls are not all full, Uncle Fu said with a smile. Said Uncle Fu with a smile. Qin Yu immediately heaved a sigh of relief. Uncle Fu continued. Of these 900 scrolls, the first 899 scrolls are completely filled. The last scroll only occupies half of the space. Qin Yu was stunned for a long time. Uncle Fu, how long do you think it will take me to finish reading these 900 scrolls? Qin Yu quietly asked. Even now, Qin Yu still didn't have a very accurate idea about the storage capacity of the golden scrolls in the divine realm. Compared to the storage capacity of the jade scrolls, how much more was it? Uncle Fu smiled and said, I'm not too sure either. But I estimate, if you finish reading these 900 scrolls without sleep or rest, it will probably take you at least a few hundred years. As long as you finish reading them, it will be considered that you have taken the first step to comprehending the first realm of the array path. A few hundred years to finish reading all 900 scrolls? Just comprehending the first step of the first realm? Although Qin Yu was mentally prepared to encounter difficulties in becoming an expert in forging weapons, just comprehending the array path shocked him. You didn't hear me clearly. I said, after reading all 900 scrolls, you will only be qualified to enter the first realm of the array path. At this time, you can't even talk about comprehending the first realm. Uncle Fu smiled faintly. Qin Yu felt a wave of pressure. To become the #1 expert in forging weapons in the divine realm, the difficulty was very, very high. Uncle Fu, how long will it take to comprehend the first realm of the array path? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu smiled faintly and said, if it's fast, then it's fast. If it's fast, then tens of thousands of years will do. There are also slow ones comprehending for billions of years, and still not reaching the first realm. Tens of thousands of years? Qin Yu nodded inwardly. If Uncle Fu could do it, then he could do better. Uncle Fu continued. Qin Yu, the comprehension of the array path is not the comprehension of an ordinary cultivation technique. It's not that the faster you comprehend it, the better it is. On the contrary, the better one's aptitude is, the longer one lingers in the first realm, the better it is. Master spent over 1,000,000 years to reach the first realm of the array path. Then, he spent over 10 million years to reach the second realm of the array path. Uncle Fu said slowly, But later on, Master abandoned all his previous comprehensions and studied from the beginning. This time, he spent over 1 billion years to comprehend the first realm of the array path. But to comprehend the second realm of the array path, he only spent 2 hours. Qin Yu's heart shook and his eyes couldn't help but reveal a look of astonishment. This Cheho Yuan had great perseverance. At the beginning, he only spent 1 million years to reach the first realm of the array path. Then he spent another 10 million years to reach the second realm. But later on, Cheho Yuan dared to abandon all his comprehensions and study from the beginning. After researching for over 1 billion years, he finally perfected the first realm. Then, he only spent 2 hours to reach the second realm. 1 million years, 10 million years, 1 billion years, 2 hours. What's going on? What's going on? Qin Yu felt that there was a great mystery contained within. Uncle Fu smiled faintly and said, "The array path is a test of talent and patience. Master had heaven-gifted talent, great perseverance, and great wisdom. In the end, he was able to comprehend the third realm of the array path. This also allowed Master to become the #1 expert in the divine realm. If it wasn't for the second time, Master wouldn't have been able to comprehend the second realm of the array path." Uncle Fu said indifferently, "What's going on? Didn't Senior Cheho comprehend the first realm at the beginning? Why did he have to comprehend it again?" Qin Yu felt that his mind was in a mess. Uncle Fu shook his head and said, "Because everyone comprehends a different first realm. The different first realms determine a person's future in the array path. Qin Yu, what I'm telling you now is also what Master told me to tell his successor before he left. For the first realm of the array path, you must reach the most perfect realm. That's right, it's the most perfect realm. You must try your best to go as deep and profound as possible." Qin Yu felt a bit bitter in his heart. Without a doubt, that Cheho Yuan's talent was extremely high. However, the second time, he still used 1 billion years to comprehend the first realm. How long would he have to spend? Would he even have that much time? "Uncle Fu, I'll refine the refining flame wristband first. As for the comprehension of the array path, it's better for me to wait until I reach the divine realm. The time I have in the immortal devil and demon realm is already insufficient." As Qin Yu said that, he stepped into the house. In close to 108 years, Qin Yu would have to undergo the divine tribulation and then ascend. In these 108 years, Qin Yu would have to do a lot of things. He simply did not have the time to comprehend the array path. 100 years? He wouldn't even be able to finish reading the 900 scrolls of the array path. In this floating house, a warm red light was being emitted. The source of the red light was the wristband that was floating in the middle of the house. It was made up of scarlet red sparkling and translucent beads. Qin Yu's gaze was fixed on the wristband. Refining flame wristband. Qin Yu was incomparably certain. At this moment, Uncle Fu walked in and said, "Qin Yu, refining that refining flame wristband is a bit difficult. It mainly depends on the true flame within your body, as well as the realm of your soul. First, drip a drop of blood onto it. According to how Master set it up when he refined this wristband, it should be very easy to bind it with your blood and absorb it into your body." Qin Yu nodded. He extended his finger. A drop of blood floated out from his fingertip and landed on the refining flame wristband. Immediately, the refining flame wristband started to emit chi-chi sounds. At the same time, a burst of white mist started to emit from it. "It's done." Qin Yu could clearly feel the connection between his soul and the wristband. With a thought, the refining flame wristband directly assimilated into Qin Yu's body. As for Qin Yu himself, almost at the same time, he directly sat down in a cross-legged position. At this moment, he had already started to refine the refining flame wristband. Qin Yu wasn't far away from ascending. Qin Yu didn't want to waste too much time on refining the wristband. He wanted to spend some time with his family. "You're really hardworking." Uncle Fu saw that Qin Yu had started to refine the wristband. He couldn't help but nod his head and smile. "With your soul realm, and the fact that Master lowered the requirements when he refined the refining flame wristband, I estimate that you'll be able to refine it in a few thousand years." A few thousand years? Qin Yu was going to undergo his divine tribulation in 108 years. Unfortunately, at that moment, Qingyu was wholeheartedly refining the refining flame wristband. Thus, he didn't know what Uncle Fu was talking about. Otherwise, he would definitely be sullen to death. Master is truly amazing. If it were an innate grand mist spiritual treasure, it would normally take several 100,000 years to refine it. For some powerful grand mist spiritual treasures, the amount of time and energy required to refine them is even more astonishing. If the grand mist spiritual treasure were to resist, I reckon that no matter how long it takes, it would still be impossible to refine it. Fortunately, the refining flame wristband was personally refined by Master. Thus, Qingyu was able to refine it in a few thousand years. Uncle Fu gasped in admiration. Evidently, to Uncle Fu, refining a grand mist spiritual treasure in a few thousand years was simply too fast. After that, Uncle Fu sat to the side. With a flip of his hand, he took out a pot of tea and began to slowly drink it. As for Qingyu, he sat cross-legged at the side and wholeheartedly refined the refining flame wristband. Time passed year after year. Within Qinyu's Dantian space. The refining flame wristband was floating within Qinyu's Dantian space. Black flames were unceasingly fusing into the refining flame wristband. At the same time, Qinyu's soul power was unceasingly fusing into the refining flame wristband. What's going on? Why is the refinement of this refining flame wristband so slow? Qingyu had already dripped his blood on the refining flame wristband. He knew that he was still very far from being able to completely refine the refining flame wristband. According to Uncle Fu, the refinement speed of the refining flame wristband was related to the level of one's soul and the true flames within one's body. Furthermore, after dripping his blood on the refining flame wristband, Qingyu also knew that if he wanted to increase the refinement speed of the refining flame wristband, the only way was to increase the level of his soul, or increase the amount of true flames within his body. How long will it take for this to end? Qingyu grew anxious. If I place this refining flame wristband into the stellar space, and place it directly at the source of the true flames within my body, I reckon it will be faster. With a thought, the refining flame wristband entered the black hole, and followed the black hole passageway to the stellar space. The stellar space was now extremely vast. Qinyu's consciousness scanned his surroundings. Outside the stellar space, the boundless flower paste space, that resembled a cosmic space, was the same as before. The thick flower paste continued to flow as streams of aura flowed into the stellar space. I'm still quite a distance away from the late-stage origin realm. Qingyu paid attention to that dark black sphere. That sphere was still flickering with traces of golden light. According to Qinyu's estimation, if one were to completely reach the late-stage origin stage, there shouldn't be any trace of golden light emitting from that sphere. The stellar space was constantly absorbing the flower paste aura in the periphery. I still need some time to absorb it. Qingyu sighed before paying attention to the refining flame wristband. The refining flame wristband was flying towards the source of the black divine fire. But at that moment, what's going on? Qingyu watched in astonishment. He saw a wisp of flower paste aura float towards the refining flame wristband. The refining flame wristband immediately began to tremble. Then, with great difficulty, it began to devour the wisp of flower paste aura. There was very little of this wisp of flower paste aura. The dark golden sphere at the core of his stellar space was able to instantly devour a massive amount of flower paste aura. But the refining flame wristband had spent nearly a month devouring less than a tenth of the flower paste aura. But after devouring just a tenth, Qingyu felt that the refinement process of the refining flame wristband had increased by a tenth. Heavens! Qingyu was stunned. At the same time, he was overjoyed. In a month, the refinement process had increased by a tenth. In addition to the 20% he had absorbed at the beginning, Qingyu believed that in another 7 months, he would be able to completely refine the refining flame wristband. But in the following days, Qingyu discovered that the refining flame wristband was absorbing the flower paste aura at a slower and slower rate. Back then, it had only been able to devour a tenth of the flower paste aura in a month. And then after spending 2 months, It had only been able to devour a second tenth. A full 10 years. 10 years later, the refining flame wristband had finally been completely refined. But at this time, there was still a small portion of the flower paste aura that had yet to be devoured. The refining flame wristband was no longer able to devour any more flower paste aura. It was as though the refining flame wristband was already saturated. As for the remaining bit of flower paste aura, it, along with the trillions of other flower paste auras, began to converge towards the core of the stellar space, the origin. Every moment, the origin was devouring the flower paste aura at a terrifying speed. Chapter 490. Within the floating house with several thousand scrolls floating around it, Uncle Fu was sitting to one side. He was holding a golden scroll in his hand, and his eyes were slightly closed. The scroll in his hand was unceasingly flickering with golden light. Qin Yu, who was sitting cross-legged on the praying mat, suddenly opened his eyes. Uncle Fu seemed to have sensed something, and looked toward Qin Yu. Qin Yu, why aren't you continuing to refine the refining flame wristband? Uncle Fu asked in confusion. Qin Yu, it's only been a dozen or so years. It's still early. Refining Grand Miss spiritual treasures is extremely difficult. It's already pretty good for you to be able to successfully refine it within several thousand years. Qin Yu smiled as he looked at Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, what do you mean by several thousand years? Even I feel confused. I've already successfully refined the refining flame wristband. Uncle Fu was startled. You're saying that you've successfully refined it? Uncle Fu had a stunned expression. That's right, Qin Yu said with a smile. What's wrong? Could it be that you don't believe me? With a thought from Qin Yu, the illusion outside started to change. Originally, it was only the scenery of outer space. However, at this moment it changed. A small bridge, flowing water, and a floating house on a grassland. As for the several thousand scrolls, they were gathered together and neatly piled up in a corner of the house. Seeing this scene, Uncle Fu said in astonishment, Qin Yu, you know, Master. Uncle Fu bowed respectfully. From today onwards, you are the master of the Bewitching God Temple. You are also my master. Uncle Fu, there's no need for that. You can just address me as Qin Yu. Qin Yu said in a carefree manner. Uncle Fu firmly shook his head and said, when the old master left, he gave me an order. Once the successor controls the Bewitching God Temple, he will be my master. I cannot go against the old master's orders. Qin Yu understood in his heart. This Uncle Fu was a puppet refined by Cheho Yuan. Thus, Uncle Fu naturally would not dare to go against Cheho Yuan's orders. Master, please call me Fu. If Master calls me Uncle Fu, I wouldn't dare. Uncle Fu said respectfully. Although Uncle Fu was very happy when Qin Yu called him Uncle Fu, Uncle Fu didn't dare. However, Cheho Yuan had also said that puppets were merely servants. A smile appeared on Qin Yu's face. Uncle Fu, I'm your master now, right? Yes, Uncle Fu said respectfully. Do I need you to tell me what to call you? Qin Yu asked back with a smile. I can call you whatever I want. From today onwards, you are still the housekeeper of the Bewitching God Temple, and I will still call you Uncle Fu, Qin Yu announced. Master. Uncle Fu looked at Qin Yu feeling touched. He was a puppet that had been refined. Although he had emotions, intelligence, and could even cry, laugh, and curse, he was still a puppet. He could look exactly like a human, but in reality, he could not cultivate. Even the energy in his body was provided by the God Spirit crystal. However, he had the emotions of a human. Naturally, he had the desire to be acknowledged by others. Qin Yu addressing him as Uncle Fu had caused him to feel a burst of indescribable emotions. Uncle Fu, you said earlier that it would take several thousand years to refine the refining flame wristband. What's going on? Qin Yu's heart was filled with confusion. Didn't I successfully refine it in 10 or so years? Uncle Fu's attitude was clearly different now. He said respectfully, Master, the refining flame wristband left behind by Old Master was personally refined by Old Master. Moreover, Old Master had considered his future successor. Therefore, refining it was much easier. With Master's current soul realm and true fire level, you should need several thousand years to succeed. As for Master's success in 10 or so years, I can't figure out the reason. Oh, Qin Yu naturally started to recall the scenes of the refinement process. After dripping his blood on it, he immediately refined about 10% of it. Later, relying on his soul power and the black divine fire, he spent several years refining another 10%. Finally, he placed the refining flame wristband into his astral space. After absorbing the flower paste aura, the refining speed increased rapidly. The first month was the fastest, and he refined another 10%. Later on, the refining speed became slower and slower. Towards the end, it became more and more terrifying. It took him 10 years. In total, he spent more than 10 years to succeed. Master, I originally estimated that your refining speed would be 10% at the beginning. Then, you would need around 5 years to refine another 10%. Then, you would need another 10 years or so to refine another 10%. After that, you would need around 2,000 to 3,000 years to refine the last 10%. Uncle Fu said respectfully. Qin Yu listened to Uncle Fu's explanation of the pattern. The speed at which the refining flame wristband absorbed the flower paste aura was like that. It became slower and slower. At the same time, the refining speed also became slower and slower. The final 10% took nearly 5 years. Master's refining speed is so fast that I have never heard of it in all my years following Old Master. Unless an Empyrean level expert helps you. Uncle Fu said softly. Qin Yu nodded slightly. His refining speed was fast not because of the help of an Empyrean, but because of the flower paste aura absorbed in the astral space. Ever since the stellar transformations reached the black hole realm and opened up another space, the stellar transformations cultivation technique's evolution has entered another evolutionary path. Qin Yu knew that the astral space was an extremely vast flower paste space. What was this flower paste space? Why did the core of the astral space, origin, only transform and evolve by absorbing the flower paste aura? Now that the stellar transformations has reached the mid-stage origin realm, it's not far from the late-stage origin realm. However, what is the realm after the 9th realm, the origin realm? Qin Yu knew very well that if the stellar transformations cultivation technique continued to develop and took every step correctly, it should be very powerful. However, mistakes could also happen when creating a cultivation technique. Once a mistake was made, the stellar transformations might take a different path. His future achievements might not be bad, but it would not be as powerful as a true great Tao. There's no point in thinking too much about this sort of thing. Who knows? I might be able to understand it in a flash of inspiration. Qin Yu stopped pondering about the stellar transformations. Uncle Fu, refining the other 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures will take a lot of time, right? Qin Yu looked to Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu nodded and said, "That's right. Master, the refining speed of the other 3 Grand Mist spiritual treasures should be slower than the refining speed of the refining flame wristband. According to my estimations, Master will need to spend. I also don't know how long Master will need." At this moment, Uncle Fu did not dare to make any assertions about the Master before him. He had accumulated all these years of experience by following Cheho Yuan. However, it was no longer applicable to Qin Yu. Qin Yu lightly smiled. "Well then, let's leave this place first." "Yes, Master," Uncle Fu said respectfully. The bewitching god temple was floating in outer space. Qin Yu and Uncle Fu were outside the bewitching god temple. "Return." Qin Yu extended his right hand. The refining flame wristband was currently on his arm. The refining flame wristband emitted a faint red light. The bewitching god temple immediately shrunk rapidly. After that, it turned into a ray of light and entered the refining flame wristband. "Uncle Fu, let's go." As Qin Yu spoke, he was about to charge into the fog-like divine restriction before him. "Master, you are now the master of the bewitching god temple. Ordinary trifling matters can be handled by me," said Uncle Fu respectfully. Then, he pointed to the space not far to the east where the 2 of them were. Immediately, a ring emitting 3-colored light appeared there. Even though Qin Yu had become the master of the bewitching god temple, he did not know much about Uncle Fu. "Master, This is a teleportation array. I have been staying in the Bewitching God Temple all these years, and have nothing to do. Thus, I set up a teleportation array here. I also set up another one outside the Golden Fragmentary Stream. I plan to not have to go through so much trouble to pass through this divine illusion restriction when leaving in the future, said Uncle Fu with a smile. Qin Yu lightly nodded his head. He was disinclined to charge through the divine restriction, and directly entered the teleportation array with Uncle Fu. Following a burst of light, Qin Yu and Uncle Fu disappeared from the teleportation array. Qin Yu and Uncle Fu were traveling together. Uncle Fu's flying speed was extremely fast. However, Uncle Fu was unable to use teleportation, greater teleportation, and other remarkable abilities. That was because he simply did not possess a soul. Thus, Qin Yu could only bring Uncle Fu with him, and use greater teleportation. On their journey, Qin Yu chatted with Uncle Fu, and learned many of Uncle Fu's secrets. Uncle Fu was very powerful. Although he was unable to teleport or use greater teleportation, he was able to cross several 100,000 miles in a blink of an eye. His speed was over 100 times faster than Qin Yu's. That was because the toughness of Uncle Fu's body had already reached the level of a high-quality heavenly divine artifact. Even high-level heavenly deities' bodies were inferior to his. Furthermore, he had set up many formation arrays and restrictions within his body to increase his speed. Thus, one could imagine how fast his speed was. At the same time, Uncle Fu was a formation array expert. After following Cheho Yuan for so many years, Uncle Fu had been studying the array path the entire time. The 900 scrolls of the array path. If Uncle Fu were to close his eyes, he would likely be able to clearly remember every single word. It was so much so that Uncle Fu had written his own array path comprehension, based on his comprehension of the 900 scrolls of the array path. He had written over 10,000 scrolls. Merely, those golden scrolls were placed in Uncle Fu's own storage divine artifact. Furthermore, due to the fact that Uncle Fu did not possess a soul, he was unable to comprehend the different levels of the array path. This had led to Uncle Fu struggling on the path to the first level of the array path. When Cheho Yuan was revising the array path, he had spent 1 billion years researching the first level. What about Uncle Fu? After following Cheho Yuan for so many years, Uncle Fu had been researching the first level the entire time. As for the amount of time that had passed, it was unknown how many hundreds of millions of years had passed. The current Qin Yu only knew that Uncle Fu was a formation array expert. However, Qin Yu still did not know about Uncle Fu's true strength in the field of formation arrays. Without truly researching the 900 scrolls of the array path, Qin Yu was unable to truly understand Uncle Fu's strength in the field of formation arrays. Chapter 491. 9 Amplification Sect. In an elegant and secluded palace. Only the Mystic Emperor could reside in this palace. Ever since the Qin clan had moved to the Blazing Sun Galaxy's Virtue Residence Star, the Mystic Emperor Xian, she had spent most of her time in the 9 Amplification Sect. This had also caused the 9 Amplification Sect Master to be extremely cautious every single day. At this moment, the Sect Master of the 9 Amplification Sect was respectfully walking into the palace. Your Majesty, Qin Yu has returned. The 9 Amplification Sect's Sect Master bowed and said. He simply did not dare to raise his head to look at Xian Shi. Xian Shi was dressed in a long white robe. Her long hair draped over her shoulders and reached all the way to her hips. After leaving for more than 10 years, you're finally back? There was a faint smile on Xian Shi's face. All right, you can leave first. Yes, Your Majesty. The 9 Amplification Sect Master bowed and retreated. After leaving the palace, the 9 Amplification Sect's Sect Master heaved a long sigh of relief. He muttered in his heart. Back then, when Emperor Yu died, not only did His Majesty not seek revenge, he instead treated Qin Yu's family so well. And now, he is so concerned about the movements of the Qin family. Exactly what is he planning to do? Even the Mystic Emperor's trusted aide, the 9 Amplification Sect Master, didn't know what the Mystic Emperor wanted to do. Many of the Mystic Thearch's people had become a part of the Qin clan. One of her disciples had even become Fingiuzi's wife. Not long ago, another woman under her command had become the wife of the Qin clan's genius Qin Nan. Qin Nan was Qin Feng's grandson. Because of this, the mystic Tharch also obtained a lot of confidential information about the Qin clan. For example, Qin Yu once said that he would probably ascend within a few hundred years. Back then, Qin Yu didn't know when he would go through the tribulation. He only guessed it based on the time of the Azure Tharch. Inside the palace, Xianxi sat in front of the dressing table, her gaze distant. Brother Fengyu, did you know? Rumor has it that Qin Yu is going to undergo his divine tribulation in a few hundred years. You don't have to wait too long for your revenge. I'll be able to take it in a few hundred years. Xianxi's voice is very gentle. Big brother Fengyu, it's been so many years. I've also become the mystic emperor of the immortal realm. However, my happiest days are still the days when you were Emperor Yu, and I was the mystic emperor. Unfortunately, you're dead. The mystic Tharch was someone with ambition and desire for power. She liked to be high above others, to control others, and to order others around. The divine realm is an even vaster battlefield. To make a name for oneself there is much more difficult than the immortal, devil and demon realm. But before that, I will definitely avenge you. The mystic Tharch stood up and walked to the entrance of the palace. He looked up at the boundless sky. Qin Yu, brother Fengyu was killed by your men. This time, I'll let you know what it means to be too late for regrets, and what it means to die a crazy death. Xianxi's eyes flashed with a trace of cruelty. Qin Yu, I will make you despair. I will make you die in madness. At this moment, the temperature around the palace seemed to have plummeted. In one of the courtyards in the Qin mansion, there were only Qin Yu, Qin Da and Qin Feng. Originally, Qin Yu had said that he would only be gone for a few years at most. Unexpectedly, 10 years had passed in such a short period of time. Qin Yu himself also did not expect that a grand spiritual treasure would be so hard to forge. And this was with the help of the flower paste energy within his astral space. The three of them discussed. What? You still have about 90 years before the divine tribulation? Hearing Qin Yu's words, Qin Da and Qin Feng couldn't help but be shocked. The date of Qin Yu's divine tribulation was truly too close. Qin Yu nodded and said, That's right. With the divine tribulation coming so soon, there's nothing I can do. Royal Father, Big Brother, it's extremely difficult for you to cultivate to the 9th level of Immortal Emperor and pass the divine tribulation to ascend to the divine realm. Even if you succeed, it will still take a very, very long time. Qin Yu had a trace of bitterness in his heart. Just by looking at how many Emperor-level experts there were in the Immortal, Devil and Demon realm, one would know how difficult it was to reach the 9th level of Immortal Emperor. In the entire Qin family, other than Qin Yu, it was already extremely difficult for another person to reach the 9th level of Immortal Emperor. This is our good fortune. Qin Da patted Qin Yu's shoulder and comforted him. Don't feel sad for us. The divine realm is definitely more dangerous than the Immortal, Devil and Demon realm. However, in the Immortal, Devil and Demon realm, we can at least live peacefully. Qin Feng said heroically. Little Yu, in the boundless Immortal, Devil and Demon realm, who knows how many trillions of people there are. To you, the stage might be too small. However, to us, it's already big enough. Qin Yu immediately thought it through. To allow his family to live in the Immortal, Devil and Demon realm, wasn't that a kind of happiness? Divine realm. Qin Yu couldn't even guarantee that he would be able to live freely. What if he were to protect his family? However, once he ascended, how many years would it take for him to meet his family again? 100,000 years? 1,000,000 years? 100,000,000 years? Even Qin Yu himself didn't have the slightest certainty. Qin Yu couldn't help but clench his fists tightly and frown. He flipped his hand and took out a scroll-like item. Royal Father, Big Brother, this item is called the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. Qin Da and Qin Feng had also heard of the famous 10,000 Beasts Atlas. However, at this moment, they were puzzled as to why Qin Yu would take it out. With a thought from Qin Yu, Yi Chu, Wu Lan and Ao Wushu appeared in the courtyard. Qin Yu, Yi Chu and the other two, including the cold and indifferent Ao Wushu, all looked at Qin Yu in shock. Qin Yu lightly smiled and said, "Don't doubt it. That's right. I've already removed the soul binding on you. From today onwards, the three of you have regained your freedom. No one will obstruct you." Yi Chu, Wu Lan and Ao Wushu all stared at Qin Yu. "Royal Father, since you're in control of the Qin Yu Immortal Mansion, then this 10,000 Beasts Atlas shall be controlled by Big Brother. Big Brother, drip your blood on it and become its master. From today onwards, you're the new master of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. The spirit beasts within it will also be under your control." Qin Yu directly handed the 10,000 Beasts Atlas to his big brother. Qin Feng looked at the 10,000 Beasts Atlas in front of him, and then looked at Qin Yu. He was momentarily stunned. Qin De was the first to come back to his senses. He promptly said, This 10,000 Beasts Atlas is extremely useful. Why don't you want it?" "I don't need it. There are only 3 spirit beast spaces within the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. The highest is only Emperor level. Bringing it to the divine realm would be useless. Instead, it would be extremely useful in the immortal devil and demon realm." Qin Yu explained. Qin Yu originally also viewed the 10,000 Beasts Atlas as important. However, from Uncle Fu, he knew that in the divine realm, the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was merely a type of entertainment divine artifact. Otherwise, it would not have been so easy for Immortal Emperor Yang to obtain it. The 10,000 Beasts Atlas had a total of 3 spaces. It could contain 3 different levels of demonic beasts. However, the strongest demonic beast that it could store was only a level 9 demon emperor. In the divine realm, level 9 demon emperors were merely pets. This 10,000 Beasts Atlas was merely a cage used to imprison some pets. Of course, as long as the master does not remove the soul binding of the tamed spirit beast, even if it reached the heavenly deity level, it would still be controlled. However, to imprison a demon emperor level demonic beast, and then nurture it to the heavenly deity level for one's own use, this sort of difficulty was many times greater than hiring 10 heavenly deities. Thus, the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was only relatively powerful in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Qin Yu, I am also not interested in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Why don't you let me enter the Jianglan's realm and continue my training? When you go to the divine realm, you can just casually bring me along, said Wu Lan with a light smile. Ever since he saw the Jianglan's realm, Wu Lan had never thought of leaving the divine realm. That was because Wu Lan knew how important it was to have a powerful backer in the divine realm. I am also not interested in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Yi Chu's loud voice sounded. Ao Wushu also coldly looked at Qin Yu. His meaning was very clear. He was also not interested in the immortal, devil and demon realm. Qin Yu shook his head and said, Yi Chu, Ao Wushu, in 90 years, I will be undergoing my divine tribulation. Although the 2 of you are level 9 demon emperors, your divine tribulation ought to be much later than mine. Yi Chu and Ao Wushu were both startled. Generally, to reach level 9 demon emperor, one would need several tens of thousands of years, or even longer to undergo their divine tribulation. That short? Said Ao Wushu with a frown. That's right, it's very short. Thus, the 2 of you are unable to follow me to the divine realm. If the 2 of you feel that the outside world is boring, you can temporarily live in the Qin mansion. If you have nothing to do, you can accompany He Tong, Guofan and them. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Ao Wushu and Yi Chu nodded. No matter how fast their cultivation speed was, it was impossible for them to undergo their divine tribulation before Qin Yu. It was already dangerous for Qin Yu and his brothers to undergo their divine tribulation together. If the 2 of them also wanted to undergo their divine tribulation together, 4 or 5 people to undergo their divine tribulation, even Qin Yu did not have the slightest certainty. Thus, Ao Wushu and Yi Chu did not mention it. Big Brother, Royal Father, with the Qin Yu Immortal Mansion and the 10,000 Beasts Atlas, I am also at ease. Qin Yu smiled as he looked at his royal father and big brother. Qin De and Qin Feng glanced at each other. They were both moved. Little Yu, thank you, said Qin Yu. As he looked at the Qin Yu before him, The image of the 7 or 8-year-old child from back then appeared in his mind. The child who soaked in the hot spring together with him. This is my third brother? Sometimes, when Qin Feng thought about it, he would also feel as if he was dreaming. Qin Yu waved his sleeve. A large group of people appeared in the courtyard. This group of people had very strange appearances. Although some of them were humanoid, they possessed large tails. Some of them were furry balls. However, the majority of them still had the appearance of humans. Lord. These 80-plus people bowed and said simultaneously. They were very grateful to Qin Yu. That was because Qin Yu had released them from the Bewitching God Temple. That's right, they were the 80-plus pets from the Bewitching God Temple. Qin Yu nodded. The majority of you possess Emperor-level strength. 3 of you possess King-level strength. You all came from other cosmic spaces. And from today onwards, I hope that you all can promise me one thing. Lord, please speak. These 80-plus people said simultaneously. Before you all ascend to the divine realm, you all can be considered as my Qin family's consecrators. You all will protect my Qin family. However, I am not very clear about your temperament. You all can directly enter the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. I will make my big brother swear that after you all pass the divine tribulation, he will release your soul bindings. Qin Yu said indifferently. As he spoke, Qin Yu's body emitted a powerful aura. No matter what, Qin Yu was unwilling to gamble with his own clan. Thus, having these 80-plus people enter the 10,000 Beasts Atlas was the safest method. These 80-plus people couldn't help but hesitate. They could only look at Qin Feng. I, Qin Feng, swear that the spirit beasts in this 10,000 Beasts Atlas. Once a spirit beast passes the divine tribulation, I will immediately release his soul bindings. If I violate this oath, I shall be struck by divine lightning and have my soul scattered. Qin Feng was very straightforward. Hearing Qin Feng's oath, those 80-plus people immediately relaxed. After all, they had nothing to do before they ascend to the divine realm. So what if they protected the Qin family? After all, Qin Yu had also allowed them to regain their freedom. When they thought of that cage, and being unable to leave it, they felt their hearts palpitate. After arranging all of this, Qin Yu's heart calmed down a bit. These 80-plus people, every single one of them, were extremely special in their original universe. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been taken as pets by Cheho Yuan. These 80-plus people, every single one of them possessed mystical abilities. Some of them were even more abnormal than super divine beasts. For example, Wu Lan from back then. Wu Lan was also one of them. Just like that, Qin Yu lived his peaceful days in the Qin mansion. Because there was nothing much going on in the Dark Star realm, Qin Yu only sent a transmission, saying that he was going to train. Thus, no one came to ask him about it. Such days continued for 50 years. This time the Qin family held a banquet. Of course, they also invited some outsiders. Only the people of the Qin family were allowed to enter the Qin mansion. Normally, the banquet would be held in a palace halfway up the mountain. At this moment, a large number of people were gathered in the palace. The majority of the people of the Qin family were here. However, this time, even the Mystic Emperor was here. That was because the Mystic Emperor was the master of Fenjiuzi's wife. The main hall was very lively. A large number of people were gathered together. Qin Yu, Qin Feng, Kuro's family, Qin De, Fenjiuzi and the others. The banquet had yet to start, but the large group of people were already chatting with each other. Little Yu, Fenjiuzi, and a red-clothed beautiful woman walked over. Uncle Feng, Aunt Feng. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Qin Yu also felt a bit of a headache toward Fenjiuzi. That was because Qin Yu suspected that the Mystic Emperor was plotting something. Thus, he was also suspicious of the Mystic Emperor's disciple, Uncle Feng's wife, Lian Yu. Brother Qin Yu, I've heard that you'll be undergoing your tribulation in about 40 years? A gentle voice sounded. With a slight smile on her face, the Mystic Emperor Xianxi walked over. When Qin Yu saw Xianxi, he was slightly startled. There were not many people in the Qin family who knew that he would be undergoing his tribulation in about 40 years. How did the Mystic Emperor know about it? Could she be Uncle Feng's wife? Qin Yu immediately smiled, nodded and said, Xianxi, when will you be undergoing your tribulation? It's still early for me. Qianxi smiled and said, Big brother. Hou Fei's voice sounded from behind. Qinyu smiled and said, Qianxi, you can chat with others first. Excuse me. Qinyu turned around and walked toward Hou Fei. Qianxi looked at Qinyu's back and had a slight smile on her face. She thought to herself, Qinyu, 40 years. You still have 40 years to live. Your Qin family also only has 40 years to live. Chapter 492. Time passed. In a blink of an eye, 40 years had passed. On a barren planet not far from the Virtue Residence star, it was incomparably hot. Even the sand on the ground was cracked by the heat. At this moment, over 100 people were gathered on this planet. Every single one of them had smiles on their faces. They were excitedly chatting with each other. The blazing temperature did not affect them in the slightest. Royal Father, this time, little you is going to undergo the divine tribulation together with Hou Fei and Kuro. Isn't this a bit reckless? Qin Feng was standing together with Qin Da. Even now, Qin Feng was still somewhat apprehensive. Qin Da lightly smiled and said, I am at ease when you are does things. For him to dare to do this, he definitely has absolute certainty. Qin Da, you've given birth to a good son. A clear voice sounded from the side. Qianxi, who was wearing a jade green gown, walked over. Qin Da and Qin Feng were both puzzled. In these years, they had met Qianxi no less than 100 times. Qianxi usually wore pink, purple or white. This was the first time they had seen a jade green gown. Qin Da smiled and asked, Your Majesty, Mystic Emperor, we have never seen you in this outfit before. Wearing a jade green gown, she had the bearing of a little girl. I have worn it in the past. It's just that I haven't worn it for many years. Qin Da, this time, Brother Qin, you dared to undergo the divine tribulation together with 3 people. This is something that has never been heard of in the history of the immortal, devil and demon realm. Qianxi said with a smile. Qin Da shook his head and sighed. You are insisted on doing this. Even if I tried to persuade him, it would be useless. Brother Qin, there's no need to worry about little you. Fenjiuzi and his wife Lian Yu also walked over side by side. Qianxi suddenly frowned and glanced at the 80+ people in the distance. She was puzzled. Who exactly are these 80+ people? How come over 80 of them are emperor-level experts? Furthermore, I can't even recognize their true forms. Those 80+ people were precisely the 80+ demon beasts from various cosmic spaces that Qinyu had come out from back then. In fact, ever since these 80+ people voluntarily became spirit beasts of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas, they had never entered the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. That was because it was too difficult to open the 3rd layer of the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. And the rest of them had always been living outside. It was the same logic as when immortal Emperor Inayang died. Wu Lan and Yi Chu were excluded from the 10,000 Beasts Atlas. Brother Qin, I don't think I've seen these 80 people before? Qianxi asked doubtfully. Qin Feng said, Your Majesty, these 80-odd people are consecrators of my Qin clan. They usually live in the Qin residence. It is normal that Your Majesty Xian, she has not seen them before. The mystic Tharch had indeed never entered the Qin residence, or the Qingyu immortal abode. I see. Qianxi smiled and nodded. However, she thought to herself, I didn't expect the Qin clan to have such a group of experts. In terms of the number of emperor-level experts under their command, they are actually not inferior to me. The first step of this revenge plan is to kill Qinyu and mess up his mind. Then, he will be invaded by the Heart Devil during the 3rd God Tribulation and be destroyed by the God Tribulation. Although the strength of these 80+ consecrators is not bad, when I get close to Qin Da, their strength is even weaker than mine. There's no way they can stop me. Qianxi already had a plan for revenge. There were 2 steps to the revenge plan against Qinyu. Back then, when Qianxi first discovered the Qin clan, she originally wanted to kill the Qin clan directly. However, later on, Qianxi understood that if she killed the Qin clan, it would only anger Qinyu and he would kill her to vent his anger. After that, Qinyu would no longer be worried about his family. He would be free from the shackles. His cultivation might be faster, and his achievements might be even higher. Her target for revenge was Qinyu. She didn't want Qinyu to have greater achievements. Hence, she formulated this plan. Your strength is strong. Terrifyingly strong. She stared at Qinyu, who was meditating in the distance. Qinyu, Hou Fei, and Kuro were all sitting cross-legged at the place where they were undergoing the God Tribulation. They were quietly waiting for the God Tribulation to descend. However, Qinyu, you are too arrogant. The three of you are undergoing the God Tribulation together. The power of the God Tribulation isn't just 3 times. It is 8 or 9 times. It might even be more than 10 times. I refuse to believe that once the heart's devil enters your body, how would you be able to withstand the third great divine tribulation that is more than 10 times stronger? Hatred was surging in Xianxi's heart. However, she still maintained a tranquil expression. Once the heart's devil successfully invaded one's body, it would be an extremely frightening thing. If Qinyu were to be invaded by the heart's devil and lose his intelligence, then perhaps he might be able to preserve his life by relying on the gold punishment spiritual pearl. However, without Qinyu's assistance, Hou Fei and Kuro would be in danger if they wanted to withstand the God Tribulation. I refuse to believe that your mind won't be shaken when you witness your royal father's death during the God Tribulation. Xianxi sneered in her heart. Once your mind is shaken and the heart's devil enters your body, it will be the time of your death. This was the only plan that Xianxi believed to have a chance of success. She couldn't think of a better plan. It's him. Xianxi's pupils suddenly shrunk. She saw a person. Xianxi would never forget the person who killed her husband, Emperor Yu, with a single punch. At this moment, that dark and thin man was together with 2 other people. These 3 people all gave her a powerful aura. 3 level 9 demon emperors. Xianxi's heart violently trembled. Standing not far away were Wu Lan, Yi Chu and Ao Wuxiu. The 3 of them had also come to watch Qinyu and his brother's divine tribulation. Not long ago, Wu Lan had finally reached level 9 demon emperor after training in the 2nd layer space of the Jianglan's realm. Humph. 3 level 9 demon emperors will not be able to affect my plan. I'll get closer to Qinda, so that when I'm about to kill him, I'll kill him. I reckon those 3 level 9 demon emperors would only be able to react in time. Furthermore, even if they were to discover me, they would not be able to save me in time. Xianxi was very confident. She possessed a divine armor. Furthermore, she only needed a single move to kill Qinda. If she were to be next to Qinda and suddenly attack him, even if Qinyu hadn't undergone the God Tribulation, he would likely only be able to react in time. To save him in an instant was practically impossible. Master, the divine tribulation is about to descend. Come over here and watch. The beautiful woman Lian Yu said respectfully. Xianxi lightly smiled and said, Okay. As she said that, she walked over to Qinda's side. At this moment, the people that were watching Qinyu's divine tribulation were separated into 3 large groups. The first group was the group of people at the very front. This group of people were Qinda, Qinfeng, Fengjiuzi and his wife Qinfeng's daughter, Qinfeng's grandson Qinnan, and some of the Qin clan's descendants with relatively high status. Of course, this also included Xianxi, who was beside Qinda and Fengjiuzi. The second group was the other Qin clan's clansmen, some of the younger generation's descendants. This group of people were right behind Qinda and them. The third group was the 80-plus consecrated. At the same time, Yi Chu Wu Lan, Ao Wuxiu and them were also at the edge of this region. Xianxi and Qinda were standing side by side. At the same time, they were chatting and laughing with each other. Qinda, you don't have to worry about brother Qinyu. I believe that he will definitely successfully pass the divine tribulation. Xianxi said to Qinda with a smile on her face. Qinda lightly nodded and said, In that case, I thank your Majesty Mystic Emperor for your auspicious words. And at this moment, rumble, boundless black clouds rolled about. In an instant, the sky above the entire desolate planet was covered by a layer of roaring and rolling black clouds. Within the black clouds were surging lightning. Qin Yu and his 2 brothers, who were sitting cross-legged, had the space within a circumference of 10 miles around them completely distorted. Big brother, it's about to start. Ho Fei was the first to open his eyes. Kuro also opened his eyes and raised his head to look. Qin Yu was the last to open his eyes. With a trace of a smile, he looked at the rolling black clouds in the sky. The three of us are going through the divine tribulation together. I do want to see exactly how powerful the divine tribulation is. The three brothers stood up at almost the same time. Their bodies were as straight as poles. The long robes on their bodies fluttered without any wind. Boom! Following a bolt of lightning that struck down from the black clouds. Instantly, there were tens of thousands of lightning snakes that simultaneously bombarded the area, within a circumference of 10 miles around them. Facing the tens of thousands of lightning bolts, Qin Yu and his two brothers were still standing with their hands behind their backs. They raised their heads to the sky and didn't seem to care at all. The genius of the Qin clan, Qin Feng's grandson, Qin Nan, was currently staring at the scene before him without blinking. His mouth was slightly opened, and he was gasping for breath in a low voice. The figures of Qin Yu and his two brothers were like gods in his heart. One day, I want to be like them too, Qin Nan thought to himself. Qin Nan wasn't the only one. The Qin clan, including the consecrators and the others, were all watching the scene before them. Looking at the lightning snakes that filled the sky, they were also shocked by the scene before them. There are already tens of thousands of lightning snakes surging before the divine tribulation. This has never happened before. She seemed to be worried. The divine tribulation this time might be very powerful. Beside her, Qin Feng, and the others were also worried. Xi's immortal awareness was able to clearly observe the expressions of Qin Feng, Feng Yuzi and them. She was unable to refrain herself from laughing in her heart. Qin Yu. Merely by looking at the tens of thousands of lightning serpents before the arrival of the divine tribulation, I was able to tell the might of this divine tribulation. Originally, I did not have 100% certainty as to whether or not my plan would succeed. However, now it would appear that even the heavens are helping me. Suddenly, a stream of blood seemed to be emerging from the boundless rolling black clouds. The blood was becoming more and more abundant. An enormous blood-red cloud emerged from the black clouds. The blood cloud was at least 10,000 miles in circumference. Huff huff. Rapid breathing sounds could be heard unceasingly. The disciples of the Qin clan, who were watching the battle from afar, felt a pressure that originated from their souls, due to the pressure of the tribulation clouds. Rays of light could be seen flickering. The consecrators of the Qin clan, Wu Lan, Mystic Emperor, and the others had all set up enormous restrictions. They were protecting the crowd. An unprecedented divine tribulation. Xi's eyes emitted rays of light. The 10,000 miles wide blood cloud was revolving like a sea of blood. Within it, a millstone with a circumference of 10 miles slowly emerged. Within this millstone, dark blue-colored lightning was flowing. 81 lightning bolts. Qin Yu, who was looking up, slightly frowned. Xiao Fei. Even the Cyan Emperor and Gold Punishment Lord Xing Yuan's first divine tribulation only had 9 dark blue-colored lightning bolts. However, our divine tribulation has 81 lightning bolts. The power of our divine tribulation is not merely 9 times. The amount has become 9 times the original amount. Through the amplification of the ancient formation, the power has increased by over 10 times, or even more. Qin Yu's expression was a bit solemn. It seemed that he was still a bit careless. When the three of them were undergoing the divine tribulation at the same time, the power of their divine tribulation would be too terrifying. Big brother, leave the first divine tribulation to me. Ho Fei laughed. I have just mastered the heaven-startling single stick strike. Let's use this to test it out. Qin Yu frowned slightly. Fei, from what I've seen of the first divine tribulation, 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts have formed an ancient formation. Its power is extremely powerful. Even if you were to block it, I reckon you would still be injured. Monkey and I will attack together, the white-clothed Kuro said. His voice was still ice-cold. If Monkey uses the heaven-startling single-stick strike, I will use the heaven-startling single spear. It should be enough. Qin Yu nodded. Rumble. The ancient formation millstone, which was formed by 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts, gradually descended from the sky. The millstone, which had a radius of 10 miles, was exactly the same size as the area where Qin Yu and the other two were undergoing the tribulation. As the millstone gradually descended, the tribulation area started to tremble. Swish, swish. Hou Fei and Kuro were like arrows that left the bow. They soared into the sky at the same time and rushed towards the huge ancient formation millstone. The surrounding Qin clan members, the mystic Tharch, and the 80-odd consecrators were all watching the scene in front of them carefully. Suddenly, a huge stick shadow and a spear shadow appeared. Bang! Bang! These two loud sounds were heard almost at the same time as the huge stick shadow and spear shadow appeared. At the same time, the huge stick shadow and spear shadow pierced through the ancient formation millstone. The millstone, which had a radius of 10 miles, began to disintegrate. Subsequently, the 81 dark blue-colored lightning bolts broke free from the restraints and flew in all directions. Without the amplification of the ancient formation, the dark blue-colored lightning bolts were unable to harm Qin Yu and the other two. Big brother. Hou Fei and Kuro appeared beside Qin Yu with a swish sound. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Not bad. Hou Fei raised his head and looked at the blood clouds that spanned 10,000 miles. However, the ancient formation millstone was truly powerful. Mixed Hair Bird and I worked together and felt the terrifying recoil. I will block the second divine tribulation. Qin Yu smiled and said. Hou Fei and Kuro didn't say much. They knew how powerful Qin Yu was. The second divine tribulation was the divine fire tribulation. Against the divine fire tribulation, Qin Yu was actually 100% confident. That was because Qin Yu possessed the Grand Mist spiritual treasure, Refining Flame wristband. Through the Refining Flame wristband, he would be able to easily subdue the divine fire. However, Qin Yu knew that some experts of the divine realm were able to observe his divine tribulation through the divine tribulation. Thus, it was best not to use the Refining Flame wristband. It would be sufficient to rely on the Grand Mist spiritual treasure, Gold Punishment spiritual pearl. Chi. The 10,000 miles of blood clouds separated into two circles. They began to rotate in opposite directions. Traces of black-colored flames began to appear at the intersection of the two circles. The black-colored flames produced by the 10,000 miles of blood clouds were extremely astonishing. The black-colored flames gathered and formed a black-colored fireball. That's right, it was a black-colored fireball. This black-colored fireball had a diameter of 1,000 meters. At this moment, this black-colored fireball smashed down with lightning speed. As for Qin Yu, he raised his head and looked at it with a slight smile on his face. She was worried that she would be discovered by Wu Lan, Yi Chu and Ao Wushu. At this moment, the only people that she was truly wary of at the scene of the Tribulation Transcendence battle were these three people. As for the 80 or so consecrators, they were all weaker than her. It was impossible for them to stop her. They are at least 100 meters away from me. If I suddenly attack and kill Qinda, they won't be able to stop me. Xianxi glanced at Qinda, who was only 3 or 4 meters away from her. With Xianxi's attack speed, she could kill Qinda within 3 to 4 meters. Those 3 level 9 demon emperors were simply unable to react in time. Fei, Xiaohei, this third divine tribulation's heart's demon is extremely powerful. Furthermore, with the 3 of us undergoing the divine tribulation together, I reckon that this heart's demons might will also increase by a lot. As your soul's level is not very high, I will take the initiative to eliminate this heart's demon. As for the divine lightning, I am confident that I will be able to eliminate it. You all merely need to watch. At this moment, Qin Yu was filled with confidence. Sigh truly sullen. Hou Fei said helplessly, if I were to undergo the divine tribulation by myself, I would definitely be able to act arrogantly. However, this divine tribulations might has increased by over 10 times or even more. As for this third divine tribulation, I do not dare to block it. Who asked Mixed Hair Bird and I to go to the divine realm together with Big Brother? We can only let Big Brother be in the limelight. Hey, you also smiled at the side. Hearing that, Qin Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He was the one who took on the third divine tribulation, yet he said that he was in the limelight. This Ho Fei. Qin Yu didn't know what to say. Suddenly, Qin Yu felt his heart palpitate. He had an extremely bad feeling. What's going on? Qin Yu instantly swept his gaze towards the person undergoing the divine tribulation in the distance. Almost at the same time, he spread out his divine awareness. This scene caused his expression to change greatly. A scene that caused his heart to tremble violently appeared. Xianxi formed a claw with one hand and directly pierced towards Qinda's chest. Qinda's eyes were filled with astonishment. With Qinda's strength, he was simply unable to react in time. As for Qin Feng, Finjiuzi and the others, they didn't even notice this scene. The Qin clan's disciples also didn't notice this lightning-fast scene. Their attention was all on Qin Yu, who was undergoing the divine tribulation. Among Wu Lan, Yi Chu and Ao Wuxiu, only Wu Lan seemed to have sensed something and looked towards Xianxi. In his eyes, there was only a trace of astonishment. He was also too late. Father. Qin Yu's expression instantly turned deathly pale. The distance between Xianxi and Qinda was too close. When she attacked in an instant, even those who were 10 times faster than her would not be able to react in time. Haha, Qinda, you're dead. If you want to blame someone, then blame your son. You don't have to worry, your son's soul will soon scatter with you. Xianxi's grim voice sounded in Qinda's mind. At the same time, her right hand formed a claw and pierced into Qinda's chest. At this moment, Xianxi grew excited. She even recalled the scene where Wu Lan killed Emperor Yu with a single punch. However, Master has ordered that no one is allowed to harm his loved ones. A cordial and mellow voice sounded. An amiable-looking old man appeared beside Qinda. He grabbed Xianxi's right hand with one hand. At the same time, he used his body to block Qinda. No matter how much strength Xianxi exerted, her right hand was unable to pierce into Qinda's chest. No, impossible, Yu. Looking at the old man before her, Xianxi's face was as pale as a sheet of paper. She simply didn't believe that there was someone who could react in such a short time, and instantly rushed to Qinda's side. Facing the old man before her, Xianxi felt a kind of pressure. The aura emitted by the old man before her was too frightening. That was the aura of a heavenly deity. Upon seeing this scene, Qin Yu heaved a sigh of relief. His heart relaxed. Uncle Fu, thank you. Qin Yu recalled the scene when he had just returned with Uncle Fu. After gaining control of the bewitching god temple, when Qin Yu and Uncle Fu returned to the Blazing Sun Galaxy's Virtue Residence star, the two of them had a conversation. Uncle Fu, I suspect that Mystic Emperor is plotting something. I hope that you can protect my loved ones. Do you have certainty in being able to do so? Qin Yu asked Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu nodded and said, Master, I am the housekeeper of your old master, the craftsman god Cheho Yuan. Regardless of whether it might be my speed or my body's toughness, they are both comparable to high-level heavenly deities. Even though I am unable to comprehend nature, my strength is close to that of low-level heavenly deities. I am confident in being able to protect Master's loved ones. Uncle Fu, aren't you soulless? If you are unable to use your divine awareness to observe your opponent's movements, how are you going to fight against them? Qin Yu asked. Uncle Fu said confidently, Master, I have a lot of formation arrays and restrictions on my puppet body. Among them is a 1-aura amplification formation. Depending on how much energy I provide to the 1-aura amplification formation, the area it covers will also change. As long as one is within the 1-aura amplification formation, I will be able to detect any movement. Furthermore, with my speed, even a distance of 10,000 miles would be equivalent to teleportation. Uncle Fu, who possessed the 1-aura amplification formation, in close combat, even ordinary heavenly deities would be inferior to him. Heavenly deities could only defeat Uncle Fu by relying on their control over space. However, Uncle Fu's body was too powerful. His strength was too powerful, and his speed was too fast. Even if he were to rely on spatial binding, if a low-level heavenly deity were to encounter Uncle Fu, he would only be able to rely on spatial binding to escape. Only mid-level heavenly deities would be able to defeat Uncle Fu. Uncle Fu, from today until the day of my ascension, the safety of my royal father and big brother will be in your hands. Qin Yu said solemnly. Yes, Master. I will definitely not allow anyone to harm Master's loved ones, said Uncle Fu respectfully. The group of people that were watching the battle were only several hundred meters away. Uncle Fu's one aura amplification formation had completely covered the area. Thus, Uncle Fu was able to clearly see each and every movement of everyone. When Xianxi extended her hand into a claw, Uncle Fu already knew. With Uncle Fu's speed that was thousands of times faster than Qin Yu's, stopping Xianxi was extremely easy. Bang! After Uncle Fu grabbed Xianxi's right hand, he casually slapped Xianxi's abdomen with his palm. A muffled vibrating sound was heard. Xianxi's body instantly turned into fine powder. PFFF so powerful. When he grabbed me, my yuanying immediately left my body. Never would I have expected that even though my yuanying had left my body, merely the aftermath of his palm strike was enough to seriously injure my yuanying. Xianxi was astonished. After Xianxi's yuanying left her body, she rushed toward the heavenly tribulation stage with an astonishing speed. Not good. Uncle Fu's expression changed. Xianxi was a level 9 immortal emperor. Once she entered the heavenly tribulation stage, the heavenly tribulation stage would descend. This would cause a 3-person divine tribulation to become a 4-person divine tribulation. The power of the divine tribulation would increase by an unknown amount. Uncle Fu's feet moved. Uncle Fu's speed was extremely fast. He arrived at Xianxi's yuanying almost instantaneously. Uncle Fu wanted to kill Xianxi before she entered the heavenly tribulation stage with her yuanying. In an instant, Xianxi's yuanying emitted a dazzling brilliance. It was as dazzling as the sun. Her speed increased by several tens of times. She managed to dodge Uncle Fu's grab. Uncle Fu prepared to continue forward and enter the heavenly tribulation stage to kill Xianxi. Uncle Fu, don't come in. Once you enter the heavenly tribulation stage, the people of the divine realm might discover you. Qin Yu's voice sounded in Uncle Fu's mind. Uncle Fu's body suddenly stopped. Qin Yu might not be clear about the people of the divine realm observing the heavenly tribulation. However, Uncle Fu had heard about it. He knew that the people of the divine realm could only see the scene within the heavenly tribulation stage. Once the people of the divine realm discovered that a puppet like him had appeared in the heavenly tribulation stage, the consequences, Uncle Fu's heart palpitated just thinking about it. Phew! Xianxi's yuanying emitted a large amount of energy and condensed into a human figure. However, at this moment, Xianxi's entire body was emitting rays of light. It was obvious that she had reached the last moment of her life. At the last moment of her life, Xianxi raised her head and glanced at the sky. At this moment, a large amount of blood clouds actually seeped out from the endless rolling black clouds. The blood clouds that were originally 10,000 miles in circumference actually doubled in size. Its circumference reached 20,000 miles. The heavenly tribulation stage also expanded by a small circle. Seeing the change in the sky, Xianxi turned her gaze to Qin Yu. Qin Yu, did you see that? The heavenly tribulation stage has sensed the existence of me, a level 9 immortal emperor. The 3-person divine tribulation has become a 4-person divine tribulation. Xianxi's voice sounded in Qin Yu's mind. The rays of light emitted by Xianxi's body became even more dazzling. Xianxi, Qin Yu grew silent. Even if I die, I will not let you have an easy time. How could I not take revenge for Brother Feng Yu's death? The mistake in my plan today was that I did not expect that old man to be here. I truly did not expect that there would be such an expert in the immortal, devil and demon realm. The failure of today's plan is the will of the heavens to kill me. It is not my fault. Qin Yu, I'm going to die. As for you, you're going to die soon. Watch, the unprecedented 4-person divine tribulation is about to descend. Let's see how you're going to block it. Following the voice transmission, Xianxi's entire body turned into a body of light. Surging energy was emitted from Xianxi. Finally, following an explosion, Xianxi completely disappeared from this world. Not even a trace of her soul remained. Silence. The group of people who were watching the heavenly tribulation stage were all silent. Qinda, Qinfeng, and the rest were all feeling lingering fear. As for Finjiuzi, he coldly looked at Lian Yu beside him. That hateful Xian emperor, the 3-person divine tribulation, has become a 4-person divine tribulation. Will third grandpa be able to block it? Qin Nan anxiously asked in a low voice. Definitely, definitely. Qin Feng said resolutely. That's right, definitely. Yor has never disappointed me. He only surprises me time and time again. Qinda's gaze was completely focused on Qin Yu, who was in the middle of the heavenly tribulation stage. As for Qin Yu, he was only looking at the location where Xianxi had exploded. He did not care about the aftermath of the explosion at all. Xianxi, the one who truly pushed me too far, was Emperor Yu. That's why he died. As for you, you were merely a helper. The enmity between us was not much. Originally, I wanted to spare your life as long as you didn't harm my family. However, you even wanted to kill my family. Sigh. Qin Yu let out a long sigh. This Xian, she might have a very deep relationship with Emperor Yu. That's why she did such a thing. Big brother, the third great tribulation is about to descend. Ho Fei's voice sounded. Qin Yu turned his head around and looked at Ho Fei and Kuro. He lightly smiled and said, Rest assured, even if it's a 4-person divine tribulation, I will still be able to block it. Qin Yu raised his head and looked at the tribulation clouds in the sky. Within the 20,000 miles wide blood-red tribulation clouds, gray-colored mist was seeping out. At the same time, black-colored lightning was twisting and struggling like a horned dragon. It's clearly stronger than the divine lightning of the Gold Punishment Lord's tribulation, the divine lightning of the Cyan Emperor, and the Gold Punishment Lord's third great tribulation was only gray in color. However, this one is black in color. Their divine lightning was as thin as a strand of hair. However, this one is like a horned dragon. Qin Yu's entire body began to flow with a gloomy golden mercury-like light. The muscles of his entire body suddenly tightened. Even the space surrounding his body started to tremble. Qin Yu raised his head. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at the rolling gray mist and the struggling black-colored lightning. Chapter 494. The gray fog seeped out from the 20,000 li blood cloud and kept gathering. It became denser and denser, and its volume became smaller and smaller. Originally, it was close to 20,000 li, but in the end, it only had a circumference of 10 li. Only at this moment, the gray fog was frighteningly dense, and it was impossible to see through it. Rumble! The heaven and earth rumbled. The desolate planet that Qin Yu and his brothers were undergoing their divine tribulation was trembling. The 3-man divine tribulation had increased to a 4-man divine tribulation. The might of the divine tribulation had increased by several times. Even the planet was unable to withstand that sort of oppressive might. Within the gray fog, a horned dragon formed by black divine lightning as thick as a water tank was rolling. That kind of terrifying pressure caused the hearts of the Qin clansmen, who were watching the tribulation from afar, to tremble. Qinda clenched his fists tightly, and his knuckles turned white. Traces of blood even seeped out from the edges of his fingernails. However, he still stared at Qin Yu, who was in the tribulation area. Silence. Everyone was silent. Silence. Everyone was holding their breaths as they looked at Qin Yu and his brothers in the tribulation area. The 3-man divine tribulation suddenly increased to a 4-man divine tribulation. The current third great divine tribulation was much, much stronger than Qin Yu had expected. Would Qin Yu still have a way to survive it? Master, are you really not going to use the divine spear Waning Snow? Are you really going to hide all your treasures to withstand the 4-man divine tribulation? Uncle Fu also muttered in his heart. If Qin Yu did not hide his strength, it would be very easy for him to withstand the 4-man divine tribulation. However, Qin Yu still remembered Granny Yinhua's reminder. What could he do? Qin Yu's divine sense clearly discovered the black divine lightning in the dense gray fog. The horned dragon-shaped black divine lightning was continuously colliding and converging. Originally, there were several hundred horned dragon-shaped divine lightning. However, As they continued to collide and converge, they converged into new divine lightning. As time passed, the number actually decreased. After a short moment, the several hundred-horned dragon-shaped divine lightning turned into 4 divine lightning. These 4 divine lightning had the appearance of a sharp sword. Furthermore, the sword light of these 4 divine lightning, sharp swords were continuously swallowing, and electric sparks were continuously tearing apart space. I see. Qin Yu's divine sense clearly saw the changes in this scene, and he understood in his heart. The last 4 divine thunders that have gathered are probably the divine thunder tribulations of the 4 people undergoing the tribulations. Hou Fei and He Yu's hearts felt heavy. That dense gray mist in the sky with a circumference of 10 miles gave them too much pressure. Big brother, let's block it together, Kuro said coldly with a hint of urgency in his voice. Big brother, before the mystic Tharch died, he rushed in as well. The divine tribulation is no longer what you expected it to be. It is too powerful. Let us 3 brothers block it together. Hou Fei was so anxious that his right hand, which was holding the black stick, began to tremble. However, Qin Yu still raised his head and looked at the large lump of gray fog in the sky. He simply did not answer. It's about to descend. Qin Yu suddenly muttered to himself. Xiao He Fei, stand beside me. Don't be more than 3 meters away from me. Qin Yu smiled at Hou Fei and Kuro and said, Don't worry. I am still confident about these 4 people's divine tribulations. Seeing Qin Yu like this, Hou Fei and Kuro looked at each other and could only listen to Qin Yu. Big brother, if you can't block it, don't hold back. Kuro transmitted a message with his demon awareness. Qin Yu looked at Kuro, smiled and nodded. The 3rd stage of divine tribulation has begun. Qin Yu's expression suddenly turned serious. He saw that the gray fog, which had been floating in the sky, actually began to descend. This gray fog was not descending very quickly. In about 10 breaths of time, this gray fog had completely descended to the location where Qin Yu and the other 2 were. Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl, Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure. Today, let me experience your strongest power. Qin Yu clenched his fists. Then, he abruptly spread open his arms and laughed loudly. Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl rise. A clear golden light screen, with Qin Yu as the center, began to expand unceasingly in all directions. The range of the light screen was unceasingly increasing. From 3 meters, it became 5 meters, 6 meters, 7 meters, 10 meters. An enormous hemispherical golden light screen, with a radius of 10 meters, was completely formed. The gray fog and the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings were actually unable to break through it in an instant. Big brother. Hou Fei and Kuro were dumbstruck as they looked at this scene. Royal father, don't worry. Little you will definitely be fine. Qin Feng held his father's hand. At this moment, Qinda's hand was clenched into a fist. It was tight and ice-cold. Qinda looked at the gray fog in the distance. I am unable to see what's happening inside at all. Qinda was filled with worry. With his immortal awareness, it was impossible for him to see through the heart devil fog. He was unable to see what was happening inside the gray fog. It was not only him, practically everyone present was worried. Pow pow pow. Sounds were being heard from within the fog. Golden light, it's golden light. Qin Feng's eyes suddenly shined. The 1,000+ people of the Qin family were able to clearly see the golden rays of light. Like sharp swords, they cut through the gray fog and rushed out. The dense gray fog was also cut apart. Master, how did Master become this powerful? Uncle Fu was puzzled. That shouldn't be the case. Uncle Fu was unable to understand. The others were all confused. However, at this moment, Qin Yu felt a burst of carefree. Haha. Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. The strength of this Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl, after being completely refined, is indeed powerful. Rays of divine awareness shot out explosively from Qin Yu's body. Qin Yu's soul power was frantically attacking those heart devils. The heart devils created by the heart devil fog were existences similar to soul power. It was simply impossible to see them with one's eyes. One could only rely on soul power to investigate, defend and attack. The heart devils of a person's divine tribulation were more or less capable of shaking the soul realm of a level 9 immortal emperor. The divine tribulation of these 4 immortal emperors had also increased the attacking power of the heart devils by several tens of times. However, Qin Yu's soul realm was more than several tens of times stronger than ordinary level 9 immortal emperors. Under the fierce and ruthless divine awareness attacks, those heart devils were all swept away. How did Big Brother become so powerful? Even the divine lightning was unable to break through his rain protection barrier? Hou Fei was dumbstruck as he looked at this scene. He couldn't help but ask Kuro, who was beside him. Kuro also shook his head. I also don't know. Other than Qin Yu, no one else knew about this secret. In these several tens of years, I had only allowed the gold punishment spiritual pearl to devour over half of the flower paste aura in the stellar space. I had only spent 20 years to successfully refine it. I reckon that I am the only gold punishment lord in all the generations to have completely refined the gold punishment spiritual pearl. Qin Yu snickered in his heart. It had been a total of 90 years since he returned to the Qin clan. Within these 90 years, Qin Yu had only spent a little bit of time to completely refine the gold punishment spiritual pearl. This was also the experience he had obtained from the refining flame wristband. This flower paste aura is truly peculiar. The gold punishment spiritual pearl had only absorbed a trace of it. I had only managed to successfully refine the gold punishment spiritual pearl. I wonder what the next realm would be if I were to absorb a large amount of flower paste aura at all times. At the moment when he was undergoing the divine tribulation, Qin Yu actually had the leisure to think of another matter. However, I made a mistake last time. After completely refining the gold punishment spiritual pearl, its power would not be inferior to the divine spear waning snow. Qin Yu looked at the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings that were unceasingly bombarding the golden defensive barrier. However, they were unable to break through it. After completely fusing with the gold punishment spiritual pearl, the power that Qin Yu was using could be considered to be a greatly increased gold force. This energy mainly originated from the gold punishment spiritual pearl. Compared to the 18-star Emperor level gold force, it was at least 100 times more powerful. Break for me! Qin Yu suddenly shouted loudly. Instantly, the golden defensive barrier with a radius of 10 meters started to shine brightly. As if it was frantically vibrating, the golden defensive barrier began to rapidly increase in radius. From 10 meters, it became several thousand meters. Wherever it passed, the gray-colored fog would all dissipate. Immediately, the heart demon fog within the divine tribulation region completely dissipated. The people of the Qin clan that were watching the divine tribulation could clearly see what was happening within the divine tribulation region. Following the rapid increase in the golden defensive barrier, the defensive power of the golden defensive barrier decreased. The 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings that had been weakened by a lot finally broke through the golden defensive barrier. After breaking through the golden defensive barrier, the 4 sword-shaped divine lightnings struck toward Qin Yu. The greatest use of the gold punishment spiritual pearl is not in long-range attacks. Instead, it's in increasing the toughness of one's body and increasing one's close combat ability. Qin Yu lightly smiled. Then his body moved. Bang! 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 Following 4 consecutive crisp sounds, the sword-shaped divine lightnings that had been weakened by a lot were all dissipated by Qin Yu's fist. Qin Yu raised his head to look. The 20,000 miles of blood cloud was currently dissipating. At the same time, the boundless rolling black clouds were also dissipating. Evidently, the divine tribulation had passed. Big Brother. Immediately, a smile of excitement appeared on the faces of Hou Fei and Kuro. Because the heart demon fog had dissipated, Qin Da, Qin Feng, and the others who just happened to see this scene heaved a long sigh of relief. In the process of undergoing the divine tribulation, they had been on tenterhooks for a long time. Big Brother, when did your strength increase by this much? Hou Fei asked excitedly. Qin Yu came to a realization in his heart. How could it be that his strength had increased? It was actually because he had completely refined the gold punishment spiritual pearl, causing the toughness of his body to increase by countless times. Even his metal strength had increased by 100 times. He reckoned that it was now much stronger than ordinary divine powers. Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure. As expected of a Grand Mist Spiritual Treasure, after completely refining it, its power has increased by over 10 times compared to when I only partially refined it. Qin Yu had grown fond of the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl. The Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl was a metal attribute spiritual treasure to increase the toughness of one's body and increase one's strength by so much. Qin Yu would naturally be fond of it. However, would he be able to bring the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl to the Divine Realm? If he were to bring it with him, he would encounter a large group of enemies, especially that mysterious individual who had gifted the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl to the Dark Star Realm. I cannot be greedy, I cannot be greedy. I still have several Grand Mist spiritual treasures that I have yet to refine. How could I be greedy for the Dark Star Realm's clan protection treasure? Qin Yu forcibly suppressed his greed. At this moment, Qin Yu had no idea that his actions earlier had already attracted the attention of the Divine Realm's experts. Chapter 495. On this desolate planet, excited voices rose and fell one after another. The younger generation of the Qin clan were excitedly chatting with each other. On the other hand, Qin De, Qin Feng, Finjiuzi, and the others walked to the side of the 3 Qin Yu brothers. Father, I succeeded. Qin Yu looked at his father with a smile on his face. Qin De is slightly excited. At the same time, he is also somewhat gratified. Good Yuer, congratulations on successfully passing the tribulation. At this moment, Qin De's heart was also very complicated. He wanted to say many things, but in the end, he could only say congratulations on successfully transcending the tribulation. Qin Yu could feel his father's feelings. Father, let's go back first. Qin Yu suddenly felt a little sad, because after successfully passing the divine tribulation, one would immediately ascend to the divine world. Moreover, the moment he successfully passed the tribulation, Qin Yu had a feeling in his heart that he would ascend to the God realm in half a year. Ascending to the God realm? Once I ascend, when will I be able to meet father and big brother again? Qin Yu looked at his father and big brother beside him, feeling even more upset. The divine realm is different from the immortal devil and demon realm. Back when I ascended to the immortal devil and demon realm, I had the opportunity to reunite with Big Brother, Royal Father and the others. However, once they reached the deity realm, with Royal Father and Big Brother's cultivation aptitude, it would be very difficult for them to reach the deity realm. And if I want to return from the God realm, it'll be very difficult. The bitterness in Qin Yu's heart caused his expression to turn ugly. I can only find an opportunity in the future to occasionally return to the immortal, devil and demon realm to take a look, thought Qin Yu in his heart. In order to return to the immortal, devil and demon realm from the divine realm, there were 2 methods. One was to grasp the spatial laws and reach the God King level. The other was to obtain status and strength, and then bribe some people to help. This method was something that Qin Yu had learned from Granny Yinhua. As for exactly how to do it, Qin Yu was still unclear. Brother Qin, the mystic Tharch actually used such a ruthless method to deal with us. Right now, many of the Qin clan's disciples' Dao companions are related to the mystic Tharch. I hope that Brother Qin can settle this matter as soon as possible. A cold voice sounded out. Qin Yu turned his head and saw that the one who spoke was Finjiuzi. Finjiuzi's expression was very ugly. He liked his current wife, Lianyu, but when he first met Lianyu was stronger than him, and her status was higher than his. Why would she take a fancy to a nobody like him? Finjiuzi had always found it strange. Could it be that Lianyu really fell in love with him at first sight? He had always had suspicions in his heart, but he didn't dare to be certain. Now Finjiuzi finally had a definite answer in his heart. His wife had only become his Dao companion because of the mystic Thearch's orders. Brother Feng. Qin De looked at Finjiuzi and sighed. All right then. Qin De felt very uncomfortable. Those people could be considered as members of the Qin family. After so many years, they definitely had feelings for each other. He really didn't want to do that, but for the Qin family, he had to be ruthless. Father. Qin Yu suddenly stopped Qin Da. At the same time, he said via divine awareness voice transmission. Father, now that the mystic Tharch is dead, those people might not necessarily be loyal to the mystic Tharch. Thus it's better for me to deal with them. Let me be the bad guy. After all, I'm going to ascend to the divine realm. You are. Qin Da looked at Qin Yu in shock. Qin Yu smiled indifferently. He said via divine awareness voice transmission. Father, we won't be together for long. Let this be the last thing that your son will do for you before I ascend to the divine realm. Qin Da's eyes turned slightly red. Once he ascended to the divine realm, when would he be able to reunite with his son? 10,000 years, a million years, a trillion years? In the future, when your son is no longer here, I can only ask my big brother and second brother to fulfill my filial piety. Qin Yu squeezed out a smile on his face. He forcibly held back his tears and turned his gaze to his big brother. Big brother, in the future, the Qin family will be handed over to you. Qin Feng nodded. Little Yu, rest assured. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. Immediately after, he turned his gaze to the other Qin clan's descendants. His gaze was ice cold. It caused all of the Qin clan's descendants to feel a bone-piercing coldness. All of you listen up. The mystic emperor harbors ill intentions toward our Qin family. He wants to kill the Qin family and me. As for those people that are related to the mystic emperor, out of consideration for the safety of the Qin family, I must inspect them one by one. Qin Yu's voice was callous. There was no room for negotiation. Immediately, a lot of people started to clamor. Utmost Supreme Third Elder, don't. I believe that my wife is definitely not someone that harbors ill intentions toward our Qin family. Immediately, a Qin clan's descendant fiercely argued. Even Qin Feng's grandson Qin Nan said emotionally, Third grandfather, please don't kill my wife. I believe in her. Don't. Since she was able to become Dao companions with the Qin clan's descendant, she would definitely be liked by the Qin clan's descendant. Hearing what Qin Yu said, this group of Qin clan's descendants all started to panic. It's indeed difficult to be an evil person. Qin Yu sighed in his heart. However, Qin Yu's face was still grave and stern. He coldly said 2 words, shut up. As soon as his voice fell, the group of Qin clan's descendants on the scene felt their souls tremble. The dozens of Qin clan's descendants started to sweat. That kind of pressure made them feel like they were on the verge of death. I won't kill your Dao companions. However, I have a secret technique. Bewitching. Anyone that is related to the mystic emperor must willingly undergo the bewitching test. Anyone that passes the test will still be a part of the Qin clan. Qin Yu withdrew the pressure on their souls. Those that are willing to accept the test, come forward. Qin Yu said indifferently. Qin Nan, don't worry. Qin Nan's wife, that beautiful girl, comforted Qin Nan. She was the first to walk toward Qin Yu. Then the second, the third. More and more people walked up. Apart from a few men, the rest were all women. At this moment, there was a woman below who stabbed a man beside her with one hand at lightning speed. Qin Yu, who had been watching from the front, suddenly had a cold look in his eyes. Humph. As soon as Qin Yu coldly snorted, he arrived in the middle of the crowd. He grabbed a woman's wrist with one hand and stared at her coldly. What? You know you can't escape, so you want to kill my Qin clan's people? That woman was very beautiful. She coldly looked at Qin Yu. Qin Yu, you are very strong. I can't even kill a single person under your watch. Fine, if you want to kill someone, kill me. After the woman finished speaking, she turned her head with a cold look on her face. Nan, you, why did you? The man who was attacked by this woman had a face of disbelief and grief. That woman glanced around. Haha, Qin clan, what is your Qin clan? If it wasn't for the genius Qin Yu, how could you have such glory? That woman looked at her husband and sneered. Qin Lufeng, don't make such an expression. Do you think I really like you? Haha, if it wasn't for the mystic Thearch's orders, why would I like you? The mystic Thearch has left, and I can't even fulfill his last order. Qin Yu, kill me. This Qin clan disciple called Qin Liufeng's expression changed a few times. Then he sadly sighed. Yes, you don't like me, and I don't deserve you to like me. Qin Lufeng turned to look at Qin Yu and said sincerely. Supreme Third Elder. I want to ask you for a favor. Qin Yu looked at this Qin clan disciple in front of him. Once immortals became Dao companions, their feelings were usually very deep. Qin Yu could imagine Qin Liufeng's feelings after being attacked by his beloved woman. However, Qin Yu nodded slightly at Qin Liufeng's reaction. Say it. Qin Lufeng nodded and said, Nan is my wife, or at least she used to be. It's fine if she doesn't like me. I just want Supreme Third Elder to spare her life. Alright. Qin Yu said without hesitation. An enemy whose background had already been figured out was not dangerous at all. This woman called Nan, or was only a heaven immortal. So what if she was hostile towards the Qin clan? The Qin clan was never afraid of challenges. Thank you, Supreme Third Elder. Qin Lufeng bowed and said, You. That woman looked at Qin Lufeng in disbelief. Qin Lufeng smiled sadly. If you don't like me, then you can leave. I don't want to force you. From today onwards, you are still Yu Chen Nan. As for me, I am still my Qin clan's Qin Lufeng. Also Chen Nan, remember this. The Qin clan is only able to rise in status because of the Supreme Third Elder. Our Qin clan is also proud of the Supreme Third Elder. However, the disciples of our Qin clan are not complacent because of this. My uncles, my brothers of the same generation, my nephews of the younger generation, every single one of them are working hard with the Supreme Third Elder as their goal. Today we are still weak. We can only rely on the Supreme Third Elder to allow our Qin clan to stand tall in the immortal devil and demon realm. However, I believe that there will be a day when our Qin clan will rely on the hard work of our disciples to stand at the peak of the immortal devil and demon realm, said Qin Lufeng as he looked straight at Chen Nan. His gaze was incomparably firm. Chen Nan was speechless for a moment. Even her heart that had not been moved for all these years started to slightly tremble at this moment. Chen Nan had never thought that her gentle and somewhat weak husband would have such a side to him when he became tough. Supreme Third Elder, Supreme First Elder Patriarch, I'll be returning first, said Qin Lufeng as he bowed. Qin Yu looked to Qin Lufeng with a smile on his face. In these 90 years, Qin Yu was very familiar with the disciples of the Qin clan. Never would he have thought that the silent and kind-hearted Qin Lufeng would have such a side to him. Royal Father, focus on nurturing this Qin Lufeng. Of those divine artifacts that I left behind, leave one for him. Qin Yu said to Qin Da via divine awareness voice transmission. Qin Da also nodded. Before Qin Yu went through the heavenly tribulation, he had left the several tens of divine artifacts that he had picked up outside the bewitching god temple to Qin Da. He wanted Qin Da to be responsible for distributing the divine artifacts in the future. Other than the several tens of divine artifacts, Qin Yu had also left behind a low-quality heavenly divine artifact. In order to refine a low-quality heavenly divine artifact, one's soul must reach the soul Jin Dan level. This was something that Qin Yu had prepared for a certain genius disciple of the Qin clan. As for those people related to the mystic emperor, Qin Yu used his soul bewitching technique to inspect them one by one. Among these people, not a single one of them knew about the mystic emperor's plan. They would only occasionally send some information to the mystic emperor. As for those who truly had killing intent toward the Qin clan, other than the woman Chen Nan, who had already been released, another woman was found. Chen Nan, and this woman actually also did not know about the mystic emperor's plan. However, the mystic emperor had ordered that if one day I were to die, the two of you must help me kill the people of the Qin clan. The reason why the mystic emperor told these two women about it was because he trusted them 100%. The mystic emperor could be considered to be powerful. Even though he had died, these two women's minds were still so firm. Qin Yu said with a light smile. Qin Da and Qin Feng also smiled and nodded. In this inspection, Fenjiazi's wife Lian Yu was still alright. She did not have any hostility toward the Qin clan. This also caused Fenjiazi to sigh in relief. Half a year's time. Qin Yu only had half a year's time to reunite with his loved ones. Thus, Qin Yu naturally cherished this period of time even more. As for He Yu, he was also quietly spending the last period of time with his wife Bai Ling and daughter He Tong. Time passed. 3 months later, On the gold punishment star of the Dark Star realm, Qin Yu's figure suddenly appeared outside of the Inheritance Palace. The guard elder who was sitting cross-legged in the Inheritance Palace seemed to have sensed Qin Yu's arrival. He raised his head and looked over. "Your Majesty Lu Xing, it's you?" The guard elder was a bit surprised. Qin Yu lightly nodded. "Brother Wenfeng, quickly come to the outside of the Inheritance Palace." Qin Yu sent a voice transmission to Wenfeng with his divine awareness. Wenfeng lived in a palace on another mountaintop. It was very close to the Inheritance Palace. In the blink of an eye, Wenfeng arrived outside the Inheritance Palace. Wenfeng looked to Qin Yu in shock. "Your Majesty Lu Xing, you finished your training? Do not address me as Your Majesty Lu Xing. Furthermore, not long from now, others will be addressing you as Your Majesty Wenfeng," Qin Yu said with a smile. At this moment, the guard elder walked out of the Inheritance Palace. The guard elder asked, "Your Majesty Lu Xing, your intention is?" "I have already passed the divine tribulation. Not long from now, I will ascend to the divine realm," Qin Yu said with a smile. Wenfeng and the guard elder were both stunned. "Your Majesty Lu Xing, why didn't you tell us about this beforehand?" the guard elder asked. Qin Yu shook his head and said, "Actually, I already knew that I would be undergoing the divine tribulation before the battle for the Gold Punishment Lord. After I obtained the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl, I began to train in seclusion, all the way until the arrival of the divine tribulation. After passing the divine tribulation, I will return the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl to you. After a few days, I will ascend by myself. There is no need for anyone to come and see me off." With a flip of his hand, Qin Yu took out the Gold Punishment Spiritual Pearl and removed the soul connection with it. Although he was somewhat reluctant to part with it, he still handed it to the guard elder. The Gold Punishment Lord was the head of the three great sovereigns, the person with the highest status in the Dark Star realm. Whether or not Qin Yu would publicly undergo the divine tribulation, whether or not he would be escorted by others before his divine tribulation, was his own business. Since Qin Yu was unwilling to do so, outsiders would not be able to force him to do so. "Lu Xing, allow me to escort you when you ascend," Wenfeng said. Qin Yu smiled, shook his head and said, "There's no need for that. If there's a chance, we will meet again in the divine realm." When he ascended, he would definitely have the Qin family and a large group of people escort him. If Wenfeng were to accompany him, wouldn't he be exposing his identity? Although Qin Yu was not afraid of exposing his identity, it would still be troublesome. "Good. In that case, let's meet again in the divine realm." Wenfeng also displayed a smile. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yu and his brothers had passed their final days in the immortal, devil and demon realm. On this day, on the plains of the blazing sun galaxy's virtue residence star, a large group of people had gathered. If the identities of this group of people were to be known by the outside world, it would also be very frightening. The demon realm's bird clans Zhongju, the dragon clans Ao Wuming and Ao Fong, the beast clan's Ox Demon Emperor, and the great ape emperor Sun Yuan. Other than the super experts of the demon realm, the current overlord of the devil realm, Wu Long, had also brought his two seniors Mo Luo and Mo Kong. The immortal realm's flame emperor, and Jun Luoyu had also come. In the entire immortal devil and demon realm, over half of the power's leaders had come here just to escort Qin Yu and his brothers. "We're about to ascend." Qin Yu raised his head and looked to the sky. No matter how unwilling he was, he still had to face it. Qin Yu looked to the group of people before him. His royal father Qin Da, his big brother Qin Feng, his uncle Feng Yuzi, his good brothers Jun Luoyu and Ao Wuming. There were also some seniors like the great ape emperor, the ox demon emperor, Ao Fong and others. There was also Wu Long who was extremely respectful to him. There were also some juniors like He Tong, Guofan, Qin Nan, Qin Lufeng, royal father, big brother, uncle Feng Luoyu Wuming. At this moment, Qin Yu felt a bit sour in his heart. After parting this time, when would he be able to see them again? "Father." He Tong tightly hugged Kuro. She was unwilling to part with him. "We're about to ascend. Tong Tong, be good." Kuro hardened his heart and pushed He Tong away. With tearful eyes, Hei Tong stood beside her mother. Bai Ling was also looking at Kuro with reluctance to part. Qin Yu, Kuro and Ho Fei simultaneously started to float uncontrollably. Qin Yu and his brothers all tried their best to squeeze out a smile to the people below. Hazy starlight started to emit from their bodies. That sort of radiance grew brighter and brighter. The three of them started to fly higher and higher. When the radiance completely enveloped the three of them, Qin Yu and his brothers glanced at each other. The three of them directly disappeared into thin air. End of Immortal, Devil and Demon Realm chapter. Chapter 496. The Divine World was an incomparably vast land world. Since the birth of the Divine World, nearly 120 quadrillion years had passed. From the birth of the Divine World until now, there had been many powerful forces, but as time passed, most of them would fall apart. Prosperity and decline were like the laws of heaven and earth. However, there were 8 forces that had broken this rule. Since the birth of the God realm until now, these 8 forces had existed for an eternity. These 8 factions were all ancient factions that would never decline. And the leaders of these 8 powers were called Saint Emperors. The 8 great sage emperors were people with extremely high statuses in the divine realm. In terms of strength, these 8 great sage emperors were all God King realm experts. And they were only inferior to the heavenly exalts that only existed in the legends. In terms of power, none of the 8 great saint emperors could compare to them. In terms of weapons, the 8 great sage emperors possessed 8 inherited grand myst spiritual treasures that had appeared since the birth of the divine realm. Those 8 inherited grand myst spiritual treasures were all first-rate grand myst spiritual treasures. Perhaps only the legendary celestial spiritual treasure of the celestial venerables would be able to suppress them. In terms of strength, influence, and weapons, they had the upper hand in all aspects. There was no need to talk about the status of the 8 great sage emperors. Each of the 8 great sage emperors possessed a territory. Of the 8 great sage emperors, the utmost East Sage Emperor possessed a territory located in the eastern region of the divine realm. The Ascension Pool was the place where people from the lower realms would ascend to the divine world. The number of Ascension Pools in the entire divine world was fixed. There were about 800 Ascension Pools. These Ascension Pools had appeared since the birth of the divine world. They were indestructible and eternal. The story took place in an Ascension Pool in the eastern region of the divine world. Beside a certain Ascension Pool in the eastern region of the divine realm, there were 10 warriors wearing battle armor. It just so happened that it was their turn to be transferred from this small team. Thus, they had to stay beside the Ascension Pool for a full 1,000 years. After 1,000 years, another small team would take over their shift. At this moment, the 10 warriors were chatting idly. Only one ascends every few years, and we still have to wait here. This kind of life is really boring. Hey, Captain. I heard that you're going to be promoted to a company captain? The skinny young man said to the middle-aged man beside him. I heard about it too. Last time, when one of our teams was hunting a powerful demon beast outside, they encountered a terrifying ant tide. The entire team of 1,000 people was annihilated. How tragic. Another robust man sighed. This time, the city lord wants to fill up the ranks and recruit new people into the army. Captain was promoted to become a company leader. Don't mention the ant tide. Sigh. Unless you've reached the heavenly god stage. Otherwise, when faced with an ant tide that blots out the sky and covers the earth, you'll definitely die. The captain shook his head and said, Captain, now that you've become a company captain, your salary should be raised, right? Your salary should be doubled for 1,000 years, right? The most beautiful woman in the squad asked. The heavenly world's army didn't care about gender at all, only strength. Of the 10 people in the team, 4 were women. Double? Haha, that's right. At this point, the squad leader also revealed a smile. But at this moment, the white mist in the Ascension Pool not far away from this small team started to roll. The white mist kept rising, and this small team of 10 immediately stopped chatting. There's an ascender. The brown-haired female warrior was slightly excited. The white mist started to boil more and more. It was as if there was a flood dragon boiling in the ascension pool. The mist in the ascension pool, with a circumference of close to 100 meters, actually affected the entire ascension pool. There's actually more than one ascender, and more than two. There's a lot of them. The eyes of the experienced Heavenly World Squad leader shined. Immediately, the 10 soldiers became excited. Receiving so many ascenders at once was an extremely rare thing. Usually, only one ascender would ascend every few years. For multiple ascenders to ascend at the same time, one could imagine how low the probability was. It was estimated that it wouldn't happen even once in 10 million years. To this squad, receiving so many ascenders at once could be considered as one of the most glorious feats of their lives. Following the boiling of the white mist, a few figures suddenly appeared above the clouds. Chi. Streams of dark golden energy could be clearly seen rushing out from the ascension pool. Every stream of dark golden energy entered a person's body. There was a total of 5 dark golden energy pillars. 5 ascenders. This is truly rare, gasped that Heavenly World Squad leader. The most beautiful woman also nodded. This ascension pool of our Yuchi city only corresponds to 100 cosmic spaces. 4-5 ascenders to ascend at the same time from 100 cosmic spaces. They are truly fated. It seems that there's only one female ascender. The other 4 are all males. This group of Divine World soldiers began to chat with one another. At the moment when they were chatting, painful sounds could be heard from the ascension pool. Hearing those painful sounds, these soldiers did not seem to care about them in the slightest. They continued to chat with one another. Divine energy piercing through the body. Every single person that ascends to the divine realm must go through this trial. Back then, I had also experienced that sensation. Truly, that squad leader sighed and smacked his lips. Immediately after, he took a glance at the most beautiful woman. Lu Fei, you must have grown up in the divine realm, right? You all must have directly pierced through the divine tribulation, right? This woman by the name of Lu Fei nodded and said, right after passing the divine tribulation, divine energy shot out from the tribulation clouds and pierced through my body. I truly do not wish to experience that sort of thing again. The divine energy piercing through the body should take an hour. The squad leader looked to the sky. It's still early right now. I reckon there's still 4 more hours before the sky turns dark. Time passed. After an hour, 4 of the divine energies were severed at the same time. As for those 4 figures, they were directly sent to the edge of the ascension pool by the white mist of the ascension pool. The 10 soldiers immediately went to lead those 4 people. Why did only 4 people finish? Why is the other person still continuing? The Divine World Squad leader asked in confusion. The other 9 soldiers were also puzzled. This was a rule. The amount of divine energy that people that had just ascended to the divine realm could absorb was limited. The amount of divine energy one could absorb mainly depended on 2 aspects. One was the body, and the other was the soul's realm. The higher the soul's realm, the more divine energy one would be able to absorb, and not cause the divine energy to go berserk. The body was the vessel of divine energy. The stronger the body, the more divine energy one would be able to absorb. Is this the divine realm? A voice that seemed to be in pain could be heard. The squad leader of the Divine World Squad, Huang Su, looked over. Yes, this is the divine realm. Don't ask too much. Stabilize your body first. Of the 4 ascenders that had already reached the shore, a man and a woman were half kneeling on the ground. Their expressions were extremely painful, and the divine energy in their bodies was constantly vibrating. As for the other 2 ascenders, they were standing there with a calm expression. They appeared to be very calm, and did not seem to be in pain at all. However, the 2 of them were still staring at the figure above the ascension pool. The 2 of them were Ho Fei and Kuro. Monkey, that feeling just now wasn't good. Big brother should be fine, right? Kuro whispered to Ho Fei. When they had just arrived in the divine realm, they discovered that the divine realm was very different from what they had expected. In the divine realm, with their soul's energy was unable to leave their body. This divine realm is a little strange. I feel that I can't even fly. Ho Fei nodded. However, with Big Brother's strength, there shouldn't be a problem. The two of you. The small captain of the divine realm, Huang Su, smiled faintly as he looked at Ho Fei and Kuro. Stop muttering over there. Let me ask you too. In the lower realm, the two of you trained your bodies, right? Trained our bodies. Ho Fei and Kuro were slightly startled. You can say so. Ho Fei giggled and said. As a fire-eyed water ape, his body was strong enough to begin with. Although he did not specialize in training his body was comparable to the 8th stage of the 9 transformations dark gold body. As for Kuro, in terms of the toughness of his body, he was comparable to Qingyu. Training your body is good. The first stage in the divine realm, the divine energy piercing the body, will be much easier, Huang Su said with a chuckle. Ho Fei and Kuro looked at Huang Su in front of them, and had a feeling in their hearts. The person in front of them was too strong. He was so strong that they were unable to fight against him. They believed that if the person in front of them wanted to kill the two of them, it would be as easy as flipping his hand. This person gives me the same feeling as Big Brother. Ho Fei and Kuro both had this thought in their hearts. Since the two of you have ascended to the divine realm, you will naturally have to follow the rules of the divine realm. However, don't be anxious. These two ascenders still need to stabilize their bodies. The two of you already have strong enough bodies. There is no need for you to spend so much effort, Huang Su said with a faint smile. The beautiful warrior Lu Fei frowned as she looked at the person in the ascension pool, who was still receiving the divine energy piercing the body. The two of you, do you know that person? The beautiful warrior asked Ho Fei and Kuro. Ho Fei nodded his head. That is our big brother. Big brother, the three of you are brothers. A sweet smile appeared on Lu Fei's face. How rare. The three of you actually ascended at the same time. It seems like fate has brought us together. Is my big brother all right? Kuro asked. A seemingly thin and weak-looking soldier said with a beaming smile. He is fine. I have never heard of an ascender dying on the ascension pool. Only then did Ho Fei and Kuro let out a long sigh of relief. Divine energy piercing the body? Qinyu's ears could clearly hear a group of people chatting not far away. This divine energy piercing the body did not affect him at all. The reason why others were in pain was because the original energy in their body was fighting against the divine energy. Once the divine energy pierced the body, it would destroy all the energy in the body, and then enter the body and gather at the dantian. But what about Qinyu? He directly hid the 9 transformations force and the metal force in his astral space. The divine energy piercing the body did not meet with any energy resistance and easily entered Qinyu's body. Qinyu naturally did not feel any pain. Others took an hour, but Qinyu had already been receiving the divine energy piercing the body for a full 6 hours. But Qinyu was still continuing. At a certain moment, Qinyu suddenly felt that the divine energy flowing in his body was giving his body a very strong sense of pressure. Qinyu even had a feeling that if he continued to absorb the divine energy, his body would fall apart. Phew! The divine energy that was continuously pouring into Qinyu was automatically cut off. Qinyu's body was pushed by the ascension pool, and involuntarily moved to the shore of the ascension pool. This divine realm is truly strange. Upon landing on the shore, Qinyu felt a sort of restriction from the divine realm. The extremely thick and stable space caused Qinyu to feel quite a bit of pressure. Big brother. Ho Fei and Kuro both walked towards Qinyu. I can't teleport anymore, Qinyu said to himself with a sigh. Haha, teleportation? That squad leader Huang Su laughed out loud. Ascenders, teleportation might be very common in the lower realms. However, in the divine realm, even the high and above high-level heavenly deities can forget about teleportation. Hearing what that Huang Su said, Qinyu looked to him in surprise. At this moment, the 10 soldiers, including that squad leader Huang Su, were all looking at Qinyu. You are the strongest among the 5 ascenders. Furthermore, you are so strong that you have surprised us. If my guess is correct, your body's strength is very strong. Furthermore, your soul's level is also very high. You should have reached the mid-level deity level, right? That Huang Su smiled as he looked to Qinyu. Huang Su thought in his heart. With that much divine energy, If he were to absorb it with divine spiritual stones, how many divine spiritual stones would he have to spend? This boy is truly lucky to be able to absorb that much divine energy for free. Qingyu was puzzled. Mid-level deity. Last time when he was with Jiang Yan, her soul's level was at the peak of the high-level deity level. As for himself, his soul's level was at the peak of the mid-level deity level. Merely by relying on the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, he was barely able to reach the low-level heavenly deity level. That's very rare. To be able to train your soul's level to such a level in the lower realm, that's very rare, said Huang Su with a smile. If one were to train in the divine realm, even if one were to wholeheartedly train, without any other worries, it would take at least several tens of millions of years for one to reach the mid-level deity level. You've reached the deity level right after entering the divine realm. Amazing. To reach the mid-level deity level right after arriving in the divine realm, that was something that was extremely rare in the history of the divine realm. Huang Su suddenly glanced at the two ascenders who had stabilized their bodies and stood up. He nodded and said, "Very well. Since you all have already accepted the divine energy and stabilized your bodies, I will be the one to lead you to the divine realm. As the person in charge of the divine realm, I will inform you all of the basic information regarding the divine realm." Qingyu, Hofei, Kuro and the man and woman all looked to Huang Su. According to the customs of the divine realm, all those who have just ascended to the divine realm have the obligation to go to the divine spiritual stone mine and mine for His Majesty Sage Emperor for 1,000 years without any compensation. Within this 1,000 years, you all are not allowed to resist or escape. All those who violate this will be chased and killed by the entire divine realm. That Captain Huang Su had a serious expression. As for the basic information regarding the divine realm, I will inform you all on the way to the divine spiritual stone mine. Well then, let's set off now. Chapter 497. 5 divine realm warriors and 5 ascenders were proceeding on foot. Lu Fei, tell them about the basic matters of the divine realm. Huang Su casually instructed. Lu Fei nodded. She then said to Qingyu and the others, compared to the divine realm, the restrictions of your original cosmic space are simply too weak. All of you listen carefully. Otherwise, don't blame others if you make a fool of yourself in the future. The 5 ascenders nodded their heads. The divine realm can be considered to be an extremely vast land. Lu Fei said with a smile. The 5 ascenders all frowned. In their memories, they were unable to determine whether it was the mortal realm or a higher-level cosmic space. All of them were boundless outer space. How could the divine realm be a land? Qingyu and the others were pretending to be confused. As for the other two, they were truly confused. The reason why I said that the divine realm could be considered to be a vast land is because this vast land was surrounded by an endless sea. Exactly how vast is this ocean? Not many people know. Perhaps the God King might know. Lu Fei said with a smile. Although the ocean is vast, 99% of the people in the divine realm live on the land. The ocean is practically negligible. That's why I said that the divine realm could be considered to be an enormous land. Lu Fei continued. Qingyu, Hofei and Kuro knew about the general situation of the divine realm. This was all information that Qingyu had obtained from Uncle Fu when they were in the immortal, devil and demon realm. The 8 great powers of the divine realm are also on the land of the divine realm. Lu Fei spoke frankly with assurance. Huang Su said with dissatisfaction. Lu Fei, they don't need to know about these things. It's better for me to tell them. Huang Su took a glance at Qingyu and the others. All of you listen carefully. The space of the divine realm is extremely stable. At the same time, the restrictions are also extremely large. I presume that you all have also sensed that, in here, you all are unable to even fly. Qingyu and the others nodded. Even Qingyu himself was unable to fly. I can tell you all that in the divine realm, only low-level heavenly deities are able to fly. Senior, how many levels are the experts of the divine world divided into? Asked the female ascender who was standing not far from Qingyu. Huang Su said indifferently. The experts of the divine realm are mainly divided into low-level deities, mid-level deities, high-level deities, low-level heavenly deities, mid-level heavenly deities, high-level heavenly deities, and even higher god kings. Of course, according to legend, there are still celestial exalts above god kings. We are only lower deities now. When will we be able to break through? The female ascender asked again. Huang Su shook his head and said with a faint smile, low-level deity. Haha, you guys can't even be considered as low-level deities. You can only be considered as preparatory deities. Reserve God? Why? Qin Yu and the others looked at Huang Su. It's very simple. Not only does a low-level deity's body contain divine energy, but his soul must also reach the soul Jin Dan level. As for the rest of you, other than this one, the other 4 have yet to form a soul Jin Dan. Huang Su pointed at Qin Yu and said. Immediately, the man and woman looked to Qin Yu. Don't look at him. Even if you all possess sufficient divine spiritual stones, it would still take you at least several tens of millions of years to reach his level, said Huang Su coldly. However, you all are already close to reaching perfection in your souls. Thus, there is no need for you to be anxious about forming a soul Jin Dan. Hearing this, Qin Yu nodded his head in his heart. The soul realm was the most difficult to increase. After spending countless years, you all might be able to reach the high-level deity level. However, from the high-level deity level to the low-level heavenly deity level, it is truly too difficult. Perhaps only 1 out of 1,000,000 deities could become a heavenly deity, said Huang Su with a sigh. Qin Yu's pupil shrunk. Only 1 out of 1,000,000 deities could become a heavenly deity? It seemed that the heavenly deity level was very difficult to reach. After reaching the low-level heavenly deity level, every step forward is extremely difficult. As for the high-level heavenly deities, they are definitely people who can call the wind and summon the rain in the divine realm. As for the high-level heavenly deity level to the God King level, haha, God King, if any of you were to become a God King in the future, then I, Huang Su, would have the qualifications to boast to others. Huang Su laughed loudly. God King. It had been many years since a new God King was born in the divine realm. Remember, a low-level deity's divine awareness is unable to leave their body. A mid-level deity's divine awareness is able to leave their body by about 10 meters. A high-level deity's divine awareness is able to leave their body by about 100 meters. As for the heavenly deity level, I'm not too sure about it, said Huang Su with a light smile. Qin Yu nodded his head in his heart. Actually, when he tried to extend his divine awareness out of his body earlier, even with the amplification of Lu Xing's tear, he was only able to extend his divine awareness out of his body by several hundred meters. The divine awareness that I spoke of is merely the distance it can penetrate through the air. The substances in the divine realm are very strange. It might be related to the divine spiritual energy. Even high-level deities are unable to penetrate through the ground, trees, seawater and other substances with their divine awareness. Huang Su explained in detail. Qin Yu and them were unable to refrain their shock. Sure enough, Qin Yu tried to use his divine awareness to penetrate the ground. Even with the assistance of Lu Xing's tear, he was only able to penetrate a foot into the ground. One must know that Qin Yu had already reached the limit of a low-level heavenly deity by relying on Lu Xing's tear. Look at these stones by the side of the road. It is impossible for you all to break them open. However, I merely need this battle blade to easily break them open. As Huang Su said that, he sliced a stone by the side of the road into 2 halves. Kuro suddenly said, Senior, how powerful is the weapon in your hand? This battle blade of mine? That Huang Su raised the battle blade in his hand and said with a smile. Although it is only a mid-level divine artifact, it would not be a problem for me to slice you into 2 halves with a single slash. Amen. Qin Yu frowned. Kuro's Kuro battle armor was as tough as a high-quality divine artifact. I can tell that your body refinement techniques are very good. Unfortunately, in the cosmic space below, no matter how hard you train your body's toughness would at the very most reach the level of a mid-level deity, said Huang Su with a light smile. The reason why a divine artifact is called a divine artifact is because its might can only be truly unleashed when divine energy is poured into it. Using a low-quality divine artifact that has been imbued with divine energy, one would be able to slice apart a high-quality divine artifact that has not been imbued with divine energy. Explained Huang Su. Qin Yu, Hou Fei and Kura were all moved. Although Uncle Fu had said that divine artifacts would become even more powerful when imbued with divine energy. However, Qin Yu did not pay too much attention to it. However, who would have thought that once divine energy was imbued into a divine artifact, its might would actually increase by this much? As they continued to walk, Qin Yu and the others came to know many things. Flying was the symbol of reaching the heavenly deity level. Teleportation was impossible. As for divine awareness, it was truly too difficult to send one's divine awareness out. Furthermore, in the divine realm, there were simply no transmission spiritual pearls or similar items. In the divine realm, if one wished to transmit information, one could only rely on people to transmit information back and forth. It could be said that in an extremely stable space like the divine realm, Qin Yu lived in the hidden dragon continent when he was young. A piece of rock by the roadside is over 100 times heavier than a mountain in the space where you lived in the past. Huang Su pointed at the rock by the roadside. In short, the various materials in the divine realm, such as mountains, trees and even demonic beasts, are all different from the lower realm. Huang Su smiled and said, "All right, now let Lu Fei explain the calculation of time." Lu Fei nodded her head. In the divine realm, there is day and night. Day is 12 hours, night is also 12 hours. A day has a total of 12 hours, and a year has 360 days, which just happens to be the number of cycles. When Lu Fei said this, Qin Yu could not help but be astonished. The way the divine realm calculated time was extremely similar to the hidden dragon continent. How can there be day and night in the divine realm? Qin Yu asked. Hearing Qin Yu's question, Lu Fei faintly smiled at Qin Yu. Evidently, Qin Yu's strength had won Lu Fei's good impression. Lu Fei pointed to the south, and then pointed to the north. The divine realm has a total of 8 sage emperors. Among them, the Light Lens City where the utmost South Sage Emperor resides will emit the light of day for 12 hours every day. As for the Floating Snow City where the utmost North Sage Emperor resides, it will emit the dark curtain of night for 12 hours every day. The light of day and the dark curtain of night just so happen to overlap. When the light of day is emitted, the entire divine realm is covered in light. When the dark curtain of night is emitted, the entire divine realm is covered in darkness. Qin Yu slightly nodded his head. However, in his heart, Qin Yu was rather astonished. There's one more thing that I believe you all have also discovered. The divine spiritual energy of the divine realm is very berserk. Lu Fei said with a smile. The berserk divine spiritual energy is something that cannot be absorbed for cultivation. Qin Yu and the other 4 were startled. Uncle Fu did not mention this matter to Qin Yu because Uncle Fu believed that the bewitching god temple possessed a large amount of divine spiritual stones, and even divine spiritual crystal souls. Therefore, he did not care about this matter. Earlier, when I tried to absorb the divine spiritual energy, I did not succeed. I thought that my cultivation method was wrong. Hou Fei said. Lu Fei smiled and shook her head. In the divine world, only the qi of divinity in the cities is tranquil. Only in the cities can one absorb the qi of divinity to cultivate. Outside the cities, the qi of divinity is slightly better. The further one is from the city, the more violent the qi of divinity becomes. I can't even absorb a little of it into my body. Then why is the divine spiritual energy in the cities calm? Qin Yu asked. Lu Fei shook her head and said, I only know that the utmost East Sage Emperor has a total of 64 cities. In all these years, he has not added a single city, nor has he lost a single city. The divine spiritual energy in the cities is completely calm. The divine spiritual energy in the surroundings of the cities is slightly better. The further one is from the cities, the more berserk it is. Perhaps there is a special reason for the 64 cities. Qin Yu had some guesses in his heart. It was very obvious that the construction of cities in the god realm was not simply made of stone. Perhaps there were some special methods used. Thus, the most important thing for cultivation in the divine realm is the divine spiritual stones. As for the divine spiritual stones, they are the wealth of the entire divine realm. Only by possessing the divine spiritual stones would one be able to cultivate at ease. Of course, the divine spiritual energy in the cities is tranquil. It is possible to absorb the divine spiritual energy for cultivation. However, to enter the cities to cultivate? Sigh. Lu Fei shook her head and smiled. At this moment, Squad Captain Huang Su turned his head around and said to them, "In the divine realm, one must pay a fee when entering a city. Furthermore, once night falls, not a single person is allowed to enter the city. Thus, if you do not spend divine spiritual stones to stay in an inn, you must leave the city. There are a lot of people in the divine realm. However, there are very few cities. For example, our Yuchi city. There are close to 20 million people in Yuchi city. However, there are over 200 million deities living outside of Yuchi city. It is not that they do not wish to live in the city. Rather, even the cheapest house in the city would cost 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones." Huang Su shook his head and said, "I have been a squad captain for so many years. I have trained so many nuns and saved so many years before being able to purchase a house in Yuchi city. Purchasing a house is truly difficult." Huang Su sighed. The other 2 male and 2 female warriors also nodded in agreement. A house costs 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. To earn that many low-quality divine spiritual stones is truly too difficult. One by one, the soldiers sighed in admiration. That Lu Fei also sighed in admiration. "I reckon that in another couple million years, we will be able to save that much money." Qin Yu and his brothers looked to one another. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones? Was that a lot? One divine spirit crystal soul equals 100 top-quality divine spiritual stones, equals 10,000 high-quality divine spiritual stones, equals 1 million mid-quality divine spiritual stones, equals 100 million low-quality divine spiritual stones. There were quite a lot of divine spirit crystal souls, and a large pile of top-quality divine spiritual stones in the Bewitching God Temple. 2 million low-quality divine spiritual stones was simply a drizzle. However, Qin Yu and his brothers had forgotten. What sort of person was the craftsman god Cheho Yuan? The #1 expert artifact craftsman of the divine realm. He was an expert that even god kings had to treat with respect and personally visit him to request for help in artifact crafting. In terms of the amount of treasures he possessed, he would have more than enough to purchase the entire Yuchi city. Uncle Fu did not care about this sort of thing. Thus, it was understandable that he did not mention this matter to Qin Yu. After traveling for close to 16 hours, Qin Yu and them finally arrived at their destination, the divine spiritual stone mine, when the light of daytime arrived the next day. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.